Mazel tov. No, I don't know if anybody can actually hear me. I am very skeptical that I've got anybody. John Wick. Oh my god, can you hear me, John? Let me know. I'm literally just doing this for the first time, eh? Brilliant. You're my guinea pig, John Wick. You are literally the first person who has tuned in for this live stream. I'm just trying to do content and show what's what in the world. I'm going to put you stay right there. And then I want to open, you can go down here. And you can come over here. Close you. Basically, Greg, a pleasure to meet you, sir. Have you been watching for a while? No, I don't know. That's not working. That's not working. How do I get this all set up so that I'm... Because I want this to be like this. Don't... Can you tell I'm completely a rookie, dude. I have no idea what I'm doing. Can you still see me right now? Am I still on the screen? Because like my goal is that I want to get like my Reddit feed here so that I can just go through the news or since December, but oh man, brilliant. That's wonderful. I'm so glad that you got a notification, you clicked on it. That's so great. And yeah, like the whole goal is to just take a look at the news. Looking good. Thanks, John. Oh, Greg, my mistake. You managed to get John Wick, eh? You must have come on and just like John Wick like the second that was announced, right? And is this your picture right here? Because you look like John Wick, bud. Like you look good. Oh man. Yeah, so this is straight up just going to be a free-for-all, right? Jagmeet says a link exists between anti-maskers and far-right extremism. This story is unbelievable. Pandemic of hate. Leaders, experts warn anti-lockdown protests linked to far-right. I went to one of these rallies. The anti-mask rally. And I got to tell you, I think that this is probably acceptable. This is probably an acceptable thing to say. Like, I think that there's a hodgepodge, but of people who are going to these protests, but I definitely think that there is, let's say, fertile ground for people who are white supremacists, who are on the far right. Like when I was there was a Christian Crusader group. I believe that's what they call themselves, a Christian Crusader group. And you should lean into it, by the way, Greg. You should lean into it. You got the look. Just keep your guns pointed away from me. I'll never mess with your dog, I promise. Yeah, there was a group called the Christian Crusaders who were there and very present and obviously trying to spread their influence throughout. Because right now, like the organization, there is no organization. There is no kind of central organization, but you can see that there's lots of like pro-Trumpers there. You can see that there's lots of people who are kind of taking over the discourse more and more, and who really are there to kind of latch on to conspiracy theory. I think conspiracy theory is the real big one. Like I'm seeing people walking around wearing like Bigfoot is real kind of stuff. I'm seeing people walking around with that kind of thing. And so if you're falling into those sorts of conspiracy theories, I mean, to brazenly not follow public health guidelines put people at risk, and that is something we've seen with extreme right-wing ideology. From what I've seen, it's not there yet. Like, they're not pushing on far right-wing kind of stuff yet, but they're definitely on that path. It's something that we really need to pay attention to, because I actually really believe, and now that I've moved and now that I'm more centralized, I'm going to start focusing, like, I'm going to go to these lockdown protests again and keep talking to people, right? Because I find it very strange that no one is actually doing that. I find it very strange that, like, CTV's not there. I find it very strange that there isn't, like, it's the largest protest movement in the city for sure at the moment. And it's very weird to me that nobody's actually going down there and talking to these people. And my concern is that what with the tip, like, we declared the Proud Boys a terrorist organization, and ultimately the Proud Boys disband, right? And I'm like, good. Let's get rid of these guys, right? Let's get rid of these guys. But I worry that that's going to start extending into different groups that may not necessarily apply for that. And ultimately, I do have, like, as a result, members of the far right have turned at virtually all of the recent anti-lockdown gatherings, trying to lend their support to that movement and thereby garner support and sympathy or solidarity with their more extreme movement. And the thing is that I do have a lot of sympathy for these anti-lockdown people. Like, this lockdown, what has happened in regards to this lockdown sucks. Like, this sucks. What we're all doing sucks. And it's but it's so frustrating because it's because we never locked down properly in the first place. We never actually locked down properly in the first place, and we have yet to do so. And so we're stuck in this kind of, like, trickle, which is now spread it way out, so that now it's just, like, this ridiculous. It's just ridiculous. That's the so, and it's all building up, and now with Jagmeet Singh, like, pointing out the extreme right sort of infection of this movement, it's all being set up so that there's actually going to be a clash. Oh yeah, and Calgary Mayor and Naheed Nenshi did the same thing. It's all being set up so that there's going to be this clash, right? There's going to be a natural clash. This force is coming, right? And eventually it's just going to go. It will happen, and it will happen in our city. It would be nice if somebody was going down there and actually talking to these people and trying to stop something like that. So that's what I'm going to be spending my Saturdays doing, trying to make that happen. So we'll see. We'll see. Top live stream. Yeah. I'm on Wall Street Bets just to pay attention to that story as it unloads, but they're mainly, it just seems like Wall Street Bets is just like memes, right? And it seems like they've moved around, moved off of GameStop, so we'll see how that all goes. Yeah, the Premier Doug Ford at Ontario PC Party government signaling the stay-at-home order will extend to June 2nd. Was supposed to expire May 19th, right? Like, this is just indicative of what I'm talking about, this, like, trickle-out approach, right? Like, they're not actually facing this problem legitimately, right? Like, they're not actually doing what needs to be done. They're just, like, it's there's this really, really great scene in a movie called, it's like a cult classic film, Wet Hot American Summer. I don't know if you've seen it, but it's essentially a film that makes fun of all of these, like, teen dramas like American Pie or any of this kind of stuff. And it's all, like, explicitly older people pretending to be teenagers. But there's this great scene where the American Pie, what's his name? Oh my God, Ant-Man, the guy that plays Ant-Man. Can you help me out? Ant-Man. Who the heck plays Ant-Man? Oh, it's good. No, I gotta look it up. Ant-Man. Who plays Ant-Man? Paul Rudd. Paul Rudd is in this film, and he's told that he has to clean up the cafeteria, and he does it with this just like, and he goes around and picks something up and just, like, grumpily, like, throws it into a waste compartment, and he's just complaining, and then grabs something else, and like slides it across the table, and it falls on the floor, and then he picks it up, and he's just like, something that would have taken him like 5 seconds to do takes him like 5 minutes to do, and it's exactly like teenagers, and it's exactly how the Ford administration has dealt with this pandemic. It's exactly how the Ford administration has dealt with this pandemic. That just like it's been pulling teeth to get these guys to do even the most basic, normal, rational things, and finally they're re-extending it until June 2nd, and they're steadily putting in more restrictions, and then they're going to extend it instead. And by the time this is all said and done, right, there are other nations that dealt with this issue, that have already dealt with the issue, right, that have returned to some sort of sense of normalcy already, and we're the ones that are the laggards. Like, we're the ones that are just extending this and making it harder than it should have been in the first place. And then eventually we will get to the point, because we have to, we'll not have an alternative, where we'll finally do a proper lockdown, and there's just going to be something explosive that happens when this finally happens. Ugh, what a ridiculous situation. Oh yeah, and now we're in, like, I keep reporting on the long-term care homes, and this, tomorrow's video is going to be about this. Military team asked for deaths from neglect in long-term care to be raised up the chain of command. Full report. What a heartbreaking story this is becoming, right? Because now it's being revealed that in these long-term care homes, it's not, if you're unfamiliar with the long-term care home story, right? The long-term care home story is that the military went in to these long-term care homes and found that that in the long-term care homes, they were basically shitholes, right? They were basically bug infested. The food was terrible. People were doing really badly. And they found that, of course, the privatized places, the places where the places that were privatized, had far more cases of COVID deaths. But now it's getting into, now we're starting to see that it's not even COVID that's doing it. Now the new reports are coming out that it's literally neglect, that it's literally in these privatized care homes, people are dying when all they needed was water and wipe down, right? All they needed was water and wipe down, right? Like, now we are talking about like high level neglect of our elderly baked in to the privatized systems. Meanwhile, Doug Ford is trying to create more privatized systems while simultaneously cutting healthcare, which we're going to run into here. We're going to run into... Okay. You got to keep a little bit of humor in it, right? You got to keep a little bit of humor in it. You got to try. Hades the game. I play video games. I like Hades. Yeah. We need a general strike. Absolutely. Absolutely. Like, things are getting really, really dumb and really, really scary. And, like, that's the reason I'm doing this, is to try and just, like, get any amount of movement, any amount of talking, any amount of organizing, any amount of anything going forward in any kind of reasonable way. Do not panic. Organize. It's a good idea. I choose socialist action. Everybody should try to get with some kind of other group. 33 days until Ontario hits 80% of adults vaccinated. I haven't been vaccinated yet. I should make a schedule and actually do that. The problem I'm having right now with the vaccination and the vaccinating thing is that, like, because we have withheld the vaccine from people on like a global level, right? Like we've withheld this vaccine. Like, you've got Bill Gates saying, yeah, we're not gonna give this vaccine to poorer countries, right? These poorer countries, like poor India, is just eating it because they can't afford this vaccine. They have no manufacturing capacity, or if they do have the manufacturing capacity, they don't have access to the vaccine. And that means that COVID is going to successfully mutate, and it's going to successfully create variants, right? And it's going to successfully evolve itself because it moves faster than we do. And our only hope is to create a vaccine that we give to everyone all at once. We just like spread it out as fast as we can. But these capitalist institutions, and Bill Gates is actually at the heart of this, these capitalist institutions are withholding it the way they do, right? They're withholding it. And so it's going to make this vaccine irrelevant because the variants are going to come through. They're going to mutate, they're going to change, and they're going to sidestep vaccine. We've already seen a variant that sidesteps this vaccine, right? Like we already know that it's the case. And I saw a poll, and of course I don't have it in front of me at the moment, and I saw a poll that showed that Canadians generally think that that's the truth, right? Canadians generally think that it's going to be the case that people are going to avoid this, right? People are not avoid it, but that things are going to get worse, right? That we're not through it, and even if everybody gets vaccinated, well, then the COVID virus is going to come through, and it's going to make everything pointless, right? So we're living in this absurdist drama where everyone is like, get the vaccine, get the vaccine, get the vaccine, get the vaccine, and then it's not going to work, right? Like, get the vaccine, like pound on it, let's go, and then it's not going to work. And what do you think the anti-vaxxers are going to say to that, right? What do you think the anti-vaxxers are going to have to say about that when the vaccine goes through and then it doesn't work? And everybody got their vaccine, but we're still in lockdown. What's the story there? Well, what do you think the story is, right? And we've got this government in power that's just dicking around. Like, it's just dicking around. Like, our government is just completely incompetent and completely foolish and completely stupid. On that note, let's have a little uplifting moment, eh? Just 1 second. On that note, let's have a little uplifting moment with my little pug. Oh, I know, buddy. I know. What am I doing? Here. This is what you want. Oh, get coated. Oh, good boy. This is my pug. His name's Milo. He drives me crazy, but I love him anyway. And he's pretty distracting, but I love him anyway. Yeah, he's my sweet little guy. He's a precious little guy. It's nice to... Don't you kind of wish that you could live the same life as a dog, as a pug? Don't you wish that you could do that? Don't you wish that you just like... Your biggest concern in your life is how to get that ball. How to just go get that ball. That ball, that's what we got to do. Yeah, I love him too, John. I love him too, Greg. I love him too. And it's something, man, I've outright been struggling with these last couple of days. I just moved, right? Like, the space you're seeing here is completely new. I came from an apartment where I couldn't actually put my hand above my head, right? I couldn't actually get anything done. I couldn't, I didn't have space to like even really play my guitar or like move around or do anything. So like it was a real nightmare. And I'm really realizing how bad it was now that I'm in this space, now that I can, like, hey, I can put my hands above my head. Isn't that exciting? But I'm also having like kind of like a crisis of faith about this channel and about what I'm doing, because like it's horrible. It's what a horror show this is, right? And like I was disconnected from it for 3 days, and it was really nice. It was nice to have that kind of ignorance is bliss kind of situation, and it's really leaving me in a position where I'm kind of asking myself, like, boy, is this worth it? Is it worth it to like stare into the void like this and have the void stare back? And I think I've really landed on like, no, I think I have to keep doing this. That if I were to stop and then significant events were to begin, I would wish that I was positioned to be able to comment on them or talk about them and to be taken seriously. And so to get there, to that event that I know is going to happen, to that position that I know it's going to exist. Well, to do that, then I have to continue doing this. I have to continue, like, staring into the abyss of this absurdist drama that we're all living on. It would be nice to live like a little doggy. It would be nice. Oh, I know. Wow, 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 wow. Oh, I know, buddy. I know. Okay. We're going to put you down now. What a good little boy. There you go, buddy. And then he runs off and does whatever. Oh, well, that's very sweet of you, Greg. That's very sweet to say. If you would like, I'm trying to get a Discord set up, and I think the Discord is probably the best way to get people connected. I don't know how to invite anybody onto Discord or anything like that, but I'm always dumping people or trying to get people onto Discord. Yeah, Discord, the Canadian Commie. The previous owner was... Oh, geez, the previous owner was murdered. Oh, goodness. That's quite a story, Greg. Oy. The Beaverton always on point, eh? Doug Ford to reopen all of Ontario as long as everyone super pinky swears to stop spreading COVID-19. Yeah, that's basically it, right? Like, he's... We're just all supposed to individualize this, right? Like this is the conservative, like this is why this COVID thing has really blown up conservatism generally, right? The whole conservatism, Petersonian aspect of like, well, individualism is the way to solve problems, right? Everything will be solved just as long as we all super pinky swear as individuals. As long as we super swear to do that as individuals, everything will be fine. Well, that's turning out to be complete nonsense, and we can see it's complete nonsense. Scourge God, which, how's that for a good name, eh? Scourge. What's Scourge in the first place? What's that? Is it like Screech? Is that what you're saying? You're asking, how do we actually make sacrifices from within the imperial core so that we are using our position of power to help those who are oppressed in the global south? Yeah. Al Jazeera just published a phenomenal article that I think I'm gonna be talking about on the Socialist Agenda podcast with JB. That's gonna be coming up next week or at the end of this week. Please go to thesocialistagenda.com to find that. And but they are saying that like the Western imperialism has basically stolen from the global south almost $200 trillion over the last 40 to 60 years. And like, it drives me crazy when people try to defend capitalism by saying like, well, at least capitalism, like sure, capitalism's done atrocities, sure, but at least it's generating wealth, right? And no one has ever looked at these guys that are saying, well, at least it's generated wealth. And nobody's actually saying, no, it's not generating wealth, it's stealing wealth, right? Like, what do you think those wars are for? Like, what do you think those atrocities that they're doing are for, right? They're stealing wealth away from what's called the global south, which is like Africa, South America. I mean, you could include sections of Asia in that. It's global south is such a broad kind of term, but so capital, like their defense of capitalism is, sure, it's doing atrocities, but it's generating wealth, and it's like literally a white supremacist argument directly in front of your face. Like, yeah, sure, I beat the hell out of that kid, but I got his lunch money, right? Like, this is what they're saying. And to get more specific to your actual question, how do we make sacrifices from within the imperial core so that we're using our positions of power? You've got to find third-party, non-affiliated political organizations that are explicitly anti-capitalist, that organize along anti-capitalist lines, that you are confident have not been co-opted by capitalists, because that happens all the time. I recommend Socialist Action. That's the organization that I work with. They are running people in unions. They are running people. I did an interview just recently with Julius R. Scott, who is running to be the president of the Canadian Federated Congress. I think that's the name of it. Well, so they're actively supporting and they're actively trying to get involved and get into the unions in order to get the unions to move towards a general strike. Because ultimately a general strike is the only thing that the capitalist class will respect, right? Everything else is just sort of theoretical and window dressing, but the reality is that until we as an entire society look at these capitalists and say, you are worthless parasites who are doing everything you can to destroy not only the global south, but also us, and we just withhold our labor from them, and we just say we are not going to participate in this, and until we finally get to that point, and we just have a general strike where everything stops, nothing's going to change. Like, nothing's going to change. You take a look at, like, Joe Biden, right? Like, Joe Biden, who's doing everything he can to just put the left to sleep. Don't worry, Joe Biden's your sleepy Uncle Joe, right? He's trying to run as many grifts as he can to try and convince people, like, oh, don't worry, everybody. We've got all this in hand. You don't need to form a general strike or a mass protest movement, right? You don't need to do any of that. We're fighting for you, right? And it's total bullshit, right? Joe Biden is a fucking sociopath. Like, he's a nightmare sociopath who's running a grift on everybody, and it's really, really obvious if you just pay attention to his life, right? Like, literally just look at who he is as a person, and you'll just be like, oh, this guy's a systematic liar who seems to tell lies only for the enjoyment of telling the lie, right? Like, it doesn't seem as though he has, and sometimes his lies are self-defeating. Like, the last time he ran for president, right, he blew up his whole campaign because he couldn't help himself but lie about his credentials, right? And this is, of course, during a period of time when lying actually had consequences. Well, now there's no consequences for lying, right? Now there's no consequences for any of that. People don't give a crap at all, right? Donald Trump's entire reign as president is proof of that. People don't care if you're a liar, right? At this stage in the game, like, somebody like Joe Biden is not going to respond to letter writing. He's not going to respond to, they're not going to respond to electoral campaigns. They're not going to respond to any of that, right? At this stage in the game, the United States electoralism exists only as a pissing contest between wealthy people. That's all it is. It's which group of wealthy people are going to exploit you. That's all, right? And none of them are nice, right? Some of them just look nicer than the others, or some of them just talk nicer than the others, right? That's the true distinction between Republican and Democrat. The Republicans will literally put a boot on your back and crap on you while saying, oh, if only you could defeat me, right? If only you could overthrow me, right? Stand up straight with your shoulders back or pull yourself up by your bootstraps, right? I'm better than you are, obviously, because I've got the boot on your back. Whereas Democrats will put the boot on your back and then go, oh, I'm trying so hard to get this boot off your back. Yeah, oh, how can I? So anyway, this is a super long form way, Scourge God, of saying you have to organize and you have to get involved in non-affiliated political, specifically anti-capitalist movement in order to organize, vote as blocks, but also organize a general strike. Because until we have a general strike, nothing's going to happen. Nothing's going to change. These guys don't care. This is why we must reject the social democrat Nordic model. I feel in many ways supporting those politics just serve to reify capital, yeah? This makes people in the imperial core complacent, masquerading as progressive, even though that social security is still predicated on the theft and brutalization of the richest nations. Yeah, absolutely. Richest in terms of materially rich countries, Bolivia, Nigeria, Gabon, etc. Yeah, that's absolutely true. Like, as much as we laud like the Nordic model, which is essentially just taking the wealth that has been stolen from other nations and has been piled at the very top and sort of redistributing it into the populace to kind of give it this nice veneer, but it's all based on the same principles, right? It's all based on the idea that we are capitalists and we have the right to steal everything from the world. And like, in many ways, it's not even capital. It's just straight up white supremacy. It's just, we're white, so we're going to take this, and we are the better people, right? Like, and there was a period of time in American history where they literally said that. That was their argument, right? I have this great book called Cotton is King that I think should be like grade 10 reading material, because it outright says to people, there are these arguments on the Confederate side where they outright say, we're white, so we're better. And it's obvious. Like, and that's their whole fucking argument. And that's not much different from what's going on today, right? It's like what's called Western chauvinism, right? Like Gavin, whatever his name was, the founder of the Proud Boys, right? People like Sam Harris, right? These Western chauvinists who genuinely will say things like, oh yeah, Western society is the best society. We're obviously the best. And I have no shame saying that we're the best. And it's like, yeah, you're the best at destroying other people, right? Like, you're the best at going into territories, obliterating everything they have, stealing all their resources, and then claiming their citizenry as refugees, which is just another way to get a whole group of wage slaves in order to suppress wages in your own communities. Yeah, it's a total fucking disaster. And this Nordic model is a concession, right? Capitalists will concede like FDR, with his New Deal, as much as that gets lauded, right? It's ultimately just a concession. It's just capital will ultimately concede everything except the structure, right? That the structure is, we, the worthless parasites who do no work, will always take surplus value as passive income for ourselves. And if we can give you nothing, we will. But if you come to our doors and say we will kill you if you don't actually give us a decent life worth living, they will sacrifice everything as long as they get to still be capitalists, which is exactly what happened with FDR. Burf, 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 burf. See, Milo wants to get involved in this conversation too. John Wick, I'd love you to do more videos on UBI, but with some suggestions on how to control rent and housing prices. If landlords could be reported and fined for price gouging, that's my suggestion, though there needs to be a set limit per square foot on what prices are. You can tell we live in an exploitive environment, because when you start talking about a UBI, the first thing that people said to me was, oh, well, the landlords will just jack the rent. Like, oh yeah, you realize you're in an antagonistic combat and a fight, right? Like, you can see that you are. It's really, really obvious because of that. And yeah, we should have rent control. I'm of the opinion that we should, like, people lost their minds about the monarchy, right? Like, remember, like, a month ago, people were just like, the Queen of England, let's get rid of her, let's abolish the monarchy. And the same people who are like, let's abolish the monarchy and get rid of these guys and all this kind of stuff, will turn around and give 60% of their wages to a landlord. A landlord. Literally a lord. Let's abolish that monarchy. Let's get rid of these landlords. Like, just get rid of them. And I'm not talking about your grandma who's renting out a room or something. There are skyscrapers filled with apartments, right? Nationalize these things. What are we doing? Like, why are we allowing some guy we've never met, right? Some people who we've never met, who we don't know, right? To control our housing supply. It's stupid. Ugh. Nordic countries still have high wealth inequality? Yep, they do. See, that's the thing about how this conversation is going and what I was saying previously, right? Like, if capitalists can just give you like a little, and this is the role of liberals in the conversation, right? Liberals are capitalists who make small concessions, right? That when the rabble rises up, the liberals give out some tiny incremental little change, right? So when Obama said hope and change, he literally meant like pennies, right? Like, he's going to throw you some pennies, and that should shut up the rabble, right? That's the position of the liberal class. And that's no different for Justin Trudeau. That's no different across the Nordic countries. That's no different across all of Europe. This is how liberals operate, right? You can I love talking when Destiny had his debate with Richard Wolff, right? He really showed that, like, yeah, liberals, like, they don't know anything about the subject, but on top of that, all they want to do is just make tiny little concessions and have small little reforms to maintain their extraordinary wealth and inequality, right? That's what they want. The Nordic countries are no different, right? They're going to have high levels of inequality, but their people have free education, right? Their people have, like, these tiny little, not tiny, like, that's fairly significant actually, but, like, they have small reforms to the system in order to make it more saleable or more livable there, right? And we are going to go through that same process too, that same process of tiny incremental reform. And of course, my suggestion is we shouldn't tolerate that, right? Nonsense to this, get rid of these capitalists. I can't stand the lauding of FDR because in the long term it was a colossal failure to the socialist movement. The Smith Act, Taft-Hartley Act, the rise of the CIA, and anti-communism. Yeah, like FDR... and FDR said it, right? Like, he said it outright. People asked him, like, what was your greatest accomplishment as president? And he didn't say, I alleviated poverty. He didn't say, I created a thriving working class, a thriving middle class. He didn't say, I allowed people to live a decent life. He didn't say any of that. He said, I saved capitalism. That's what he said. And the saving of capitalism allowed the capitalists to regroup and then dismantle and now they're dismantling all of the gains of the New Deal, right? Because that's what capitalists do. The capitalists are ultimately regressive. They want to regress the society back towards feudalism. That's what they're trying to do. It's very clearly what they're trying to do. We shouldn't let them. Nice shirt, by the way. Are you a fan of One Punch Man? Season 1 of One Punch Man. Season 1 of One Punch Man is a brilliant piece of art. Season 2 is worthless. It literally was obviously this just like, oh, One Punch Man was successful, let's quickly jam together. There's this, it's very clear that in Season 2 that they didn't know what to do with One Punch Man, right? They didn't understand what his arc should look like. So they more or less excluded him from the story because they didn't know what to do with him. And it's so annoying because they had this one conversation between him, Satama, and King, right? And they had one conversation where King is talking about, like, where Satama is saying, like, I don't know what to do with all this power. And Satama and King is saying, well, why? The point is not to accrue larger power. The point is to do good with your power, right? And they had this conversation, and Satama walked away from it being like, oh, yeah, interesting. And I'm like, there's your whole season, you dum-dums. They had this one tiny, profound conversation between Satama and King where instead of saying, oh, that's your season, like, that's your whole thing, for Satama to realize, like, the power is one thing, but doing good with it is another realization. The old the Spider-Man thing, responsibility. With great power comes great responsibility, right? Like, that's Satama's actual arc, and they just didn't realize it until, like, literally, like, the last episode where they have this one conversation where they try to twist it into... Anyway. Watch Season 1. Don't worry about Season 2. Season 1 is brilliant. Season 2 is worthless. Russian universal housing isn't that bad, in my honest opinion. Any attempt to house everyone is good, right? At this stage in the game, given how badly we fumbled the ball, we could do anything. Like, that's what's so embarrassing about the current situation that we have in the West, that we could do literally anything and it would be better than what we're doing now, right? Because we don't provide housing for everyone. We don't even provide affordable housing really for everybody, right? Like, we don't do any of this kind of stuff for anybody. And if we were to attempt to do anything, it would be better. And because we're not even attempting to do anything, because the only thing we're attempting to do is entrench corporate power through overt fascist institutions like the Canadian Infrastructure Bank, and because all we're trying to do is entrench corporate power, we're going to continuously fall behind. right? Like Joe Biden in his speech was talking about how we're already behind China. Well, we're not doing anything, right? We're not doing anything to get even on par with China. And in another 10 years, China's going to be way past us. They're going to blow us out of the water, dude. Like they're going to make us look like a rabble of dumb hicks. Because guess what? We are a rabble of dumb hicks, right? China is like a 2,000-year-old empire, if not longer than that is just like constantly in this overwhelming state of reform that has landed on this idea of, oh, hey, maybe we should help everybody. Maybe we should pass policies that help anybody. And because they have done anything in that regard, as opposed to us, which has done exactly the opposite, they're going to be so far ahead of us that they're the ones that are actually going to go to Mars, guys. Like they're the ones that are actually going to be the leaders while we are still fighting over whether or not people should have houses. Like this is how embarrassing this conversation is going to be. And it's going to get obvious. Like it's going to get real obvious. UBI was actually created by the Milton Friedman camp. Yeah, that's correct. It is a sham and never actually universal. It makes the most vulnerable people have to opt in and reject their other subsidies, example, disability. Yeah, that's a lot of statements in one thing, dude. I will happily unpack this, though, because I've been following the UBI movement since, like, its inception, but certainly its rebirth here in Canada. It was Evelyn Forget in Manitoba who really sparked and refueled the conversation about the basic income, because she's an economist at the University of University of Manitoba. Either the University of Winnipeg or the University of Manitoba, I can't remember. She's in Manitoba, my home province. And she basically discovered a whole bunch of boxes in a basement tucked into a corner somewhere. That was the information that had come out of the Dauphin basic income experiment. Dauphin is a small town in Manitoba where they ran this experiment. And she published her results and showed that that there were improvements to education, there were improvements to people's health, there were a lowering of the crime rate, like all these kinds of things that could be tied directly to the basic income. And so that recreated this urge that people have. You are correct that it was supported by Milton Friedman. I don't think it was created by the Milton Friedman camp, but Milton Friedman certainly agreed with it. Because Milton Friedman is actually like a really complex and interesting person, because I genuinely don't think he understood exactly how evil some of the stuff he believed really was. Like, I do believe that he thought he was good. I don't think he was like overtly fascist. But a lot of this, like, I mean, he was like the main economic force in neoliberalism. His ideas were the main economic force in taking over the global South, right? And neoliberalism has been a complete disaster in South America. So it's, but I don't think it's enough to reject the idea. It is a sham and never actually universal. That comes down to implementation, right? Like that's just, of course, a program is going to fail if you implement it to fail, right? It makes the most vulnerable people have to opt in and reject their other subsidies. Most people who are in support of a basic income don't want to remove disability, and in fact, I think what's happening to the disabled here in Canada is disgusting, right? We know that people who have disabilities are here in Canada are getting way less support, even than America. More people support people in America. The disabled people get more support in America than get support here in Canada. And it's not by small numbers, right? If you go to Europe, like the Netherlands and these sorts of places are giving 3 times the amount of support to people with disabilities. What we're doing is abhorrent, completely disgusting. We should give 3 times the amount of money to the disabled that we are currently now, and then a basic income, right? We should shut up about it and we should just do it. Meanwhile, giving able-bodied people an additional X amount of money in their pocket, resulting in increased social drift for the most vulnerable. Yeah, if we were to do that, right? If we were to basically say that disabled people and able-bodied people should get the same amount, right? And then that should cover everything. I just don't think, if that's the proposal, I just can't go along with that. That's gross. That's super gross, right? I will say this about a basic income, because I do support a basic income. I'm a communist, but I support a basic income because it's not enough to simply go to a cliff and say, hey, we should put a rail on the cliff, if there are people who have already fallen over the side and are hanging off the edge of the cliff, right? You should go, hey, let's pass something easy to get these people off the side of the cliff that they've fallen down, and then we can talk about putting up a rail, right? Then we can talk about doing something to protect people from falling over the side of the cliff in the first place. I see the basic income as a transitionary measure, as a necessary transitionary measure, but it is ultimately a reform of a capitalist system. It's like if you're playing a game of Monopoly and you pass go, you get $200, right? And you can set that number however high or low you want, but you still get it every time you just pass go, right? That's essentially what a basic income is. But you'll recall that when you're playing a game of Monopoly, the simple act of passing go won't stop you from facing the disasters that the game itself has built into it, right? So a basic income is not a final answer, but it is a transitionary measure that I think will be crucially necessary. Like, it's an emergency break. Like, we need something. Like, people need food, people need shelter, we need something. And until we actually have enough people who can get out onto the streets to form some kind of revolutionary force, right, which is the goal of this channel and the goal of any communist in a capitalist society, to form a revolutionary force. Until we can get that energy, we have energy behind the basic income. Most liberals support a basic income. Most NDP, most Green Party people support a basic income. And the numbers even in the Conservative Party are starting to tilt towards supporting a basic income. And once that starts to happen, if majority numbers or even equal numbers start to show in the Conservative Party for support of the basic income, it's probably going to happen. And it will likely be the Liberal Party itself who finally puts it in, because they will be threatened enough by an upswell from the right and the left to do it. What it'll look like, we'll see. Liberals are slimy and slippery, but it is what it is. Could you contrast with a guaranteed jobs program? I think that's superior to UBI and could be built around the technocratic job of China. For example, jobs making renewable energy and transport infrastructure. I don't trust an imperial nation to create a guaranteed jobs program that is actually going to deal with the severe issue of climate change in any significant way. Like, when I hear guaranteed jobs program, I don't really hear much of a difference between that and like wage slave program, right? Like, we already live in a wage slave society. Capitalism is a wage slave system. If you're getting paid wages, you are a wage slave. Like, that's pretty black and white. You are enslaved to the society. You are enslaved to the boss, right? To the capitalist owner, right? The only difference between what we are doing and what was happening under chattel slavery is that instead of us being bought and owned on a permanent basis, we rent ourselves, right? But most of our lives go into these capitalist pursuits. Most of what we do is wage slavery, right? It's what we're doing. It's really, really clear. And to entrench that idea of wage slavery into our government, right? So that now it's the government that's paying the wage slaves, right? And of course, we are talking about, like, the Liberal government has erected a literal fascist organization called the Canadian Infrastructure Bank, which is structured, it merges the corporate sector and the government sector perfectly. It literally goes bonk and ensures that monarchical power, like David Thompson, who's a baron, right? Who's the richest man in Canada, who you've probably never heard of because no one ever talks about him, is a baron. His official title is the third Baron of Fleet. And now this guy is going to have say on whether or not bridges get built, right? Whether or not roads get built, whether or not power lines get built, right? It's a complete and total disaster. And a liberal party that is enacting that kind of legislation, like they're going to erect something like a guaranteed jobs program. They're going to erect it to benefit these guys, right? So when I hear a guaranteed jobs program, I see fascism right in front of my face, like right in front of my face in a structural kind of way, because they're not going to have us build like renewable energy or green projects or any of this kind of stuff, because that destroys the energy sector, right? They're gonna basically just have us do a bunch of busy work, right? Creating meaningless projects to enrich themselves and keep us busy, to distract us from our job, our real job, which is to create a revolutionary force in this country, right? They're not interested in giving us a nice life. They're not interested in making things better for us, right? The only way that anything nice is going to actually happen, even a basic income, right? The only way anything nice is going to actually happen for us is if we fight for it. That's it. The major difference is that, but isn't that the same as what you said about UBI? Can you really envision that being progressive under the capital paradigm? I think the difference is that there's a lot of propaganda going on right now, and there's a lot of misinformation, and people don't really know how the system operates, right? People do understand how a basic income would operate, right? Because a basic income is very simple. For like really, really, like it's, you know if it's a basic income or if it's not a basic income very quickly. It's very obvious. Whereas something like a jobs program, it's not necessarily obvious, right? Like that's why the Canadian Infrastructure Bank is so devious, because it's not obvious, right? Like it's not jackboots in the streets, right? Like, hold on one second here, guys. Ugh, my dog wants some peanut butter, and I got some peanut butter in here, so I got to give him some peanut butter, or else he's going to lose his little mind. Peanut butter jelly time, peanut butter jelly time. There you go, bud. Like a basic income, it's very obvious if we have it or we don't, right? Are checks going out to everybody? Yes, no. If no, not a basic income, right? Is there a means test of some kind? If there is, it's not a basic income, right? And we will be able to very clearly have these very obvious conversation points. But something like a jobs program, right? Like, it's not obvious. It's super not obvious as to whether or not what we are doing is beneficial or not. All people will really understand is, well, the government told me to go do this, and so I'm going to go do this. And if I don't do this, then I don't get to eat, right? Like I have significant problems with a jobs program because I don't trust our capitalist system. It's like the same thing with the temporary foreign workers program, right? People don't really understand what that program actually is or what it is actually doing. And it's an overt, obvious wage slave system. Like it's taking people who are poor and desperate from nations we destroy, funneling them up into our farming sector, mainly our agriculture sector, paying them less than the minimum wage because they're second class, they're literal slaves, like they're not citizens, and treating them like trash and garbage, and then when the season's over, kicking them out of the country. Like and there's a system that's right in front of our face, the temporary foreign workers program, right? But people don't understand it, and they don't think of it that way. They think we're giving these people this great opportunity, right? They think, oh yeah, there's people coming up, temporary foreign workers program, right? Helps the farmers, help these guys send some money back home, all this kind of stuff. Like, what do you think a jobs program is going to look like, right? Like, what do you think that's going to look like? It's going to, like, conservatives are going to be, like, if we raise any concerns because we've been sent to build a worthless highway that nobody wants because they're doing a land scam, right? Because a bunch of rich people bought a bunch of worthless land up north, and now, the government wants to put through a road. The government, somebody like Doug Ford, right, wants to put a road through here because nobody wants it. But we own that land, so it jacks the price of the value of that land. And here we are building this worthless road that no one's going to use but it's going to funnel a whole bunch of money to capitalists while paying us a bare subsistence wage. Oh, and incidentally, by the way, wasting all our time. I think that's the key difference. That's the divergent point that I think I really want to land on, right? A basic income, even one that's implemented badly or even one that's not really happening, is still going to give us our time, right? Whereas a jobs program implicitly says from the outset, I get to decide what you do with your time, and I'm going to waste it, right? And there's a high chance I'll waste it. I'll be more specific. But with a basic income, I at least get my time back, which isn't that the whole point? Isn't the whole point that we want our time back? Whereas a jobs program wastes my time from the outset, even if it's something that's modestly beneficial. Right? Even if I'm working on like a solar panel field or something like this, right? The government's still telling me to do it. I'm still going to go do it. It's probably going to be a total catastrophe. And guess what? At the end of my life, I'm going to be like, oh, geez, I'm glad I sure got to be told to go work on a project that was worthless, right? Like, we want our time. That's the whole point. We want our time. And a jobs program doesn't provide that, right? It doesn't give us our time back. And you're talking to somebody, by the way, who has so little faith in the capitalist system that it would be better if everybody just sat around doing absolutely nothing than what we're doing now. That's my position. Because giving people their time back in this structure that we have right now is a way better way to fight climate change, to deal with social issues, to deal anything. Like, we all just need to calm the fuck down. We all just need to calm down. We're on this like capitalist high of just like, and we can't think and we can't do anything. And the absolute worst thing, and the big reason why Doug Ford and his ilk don't want to actually do a proper lockdown and have us all calm down and pay us to stay at home and just be like, boo, right? The number one reason is because if we actually have a moment where all together we're not being bombarded by capitalist nonsense, where our time isn't being completely wasted, we're not constantly being punched in the face over and over and over again with gotta get to work, gotta do this, yes sir, I'll do this, absolutely, thanks sir. Okay, if we actually calm down for a minute and actually look around at one another and actually acknowledge all together, all at once, that I hate what's happening, I think this system doesn't work, I think that it's wasting my time, and I think it's killing my planet. If we all said that all at once, then we might take the next logical step of, we should go out into the street. We should stop this whole thing. This whole thing should end, and the people who are benefiting from it and who are perpetuating it should face some consequences. That's what they never want us to do. And so that's why they're so slow on passing something like a basic income, because that's going to give us our time and might actually start that process. Whereas a jobs program, they can just send us wherever they want us, whenever they want us. Split us up, send us wherever. Oh, this group here is starting to talk to one another, so let's just split them up, right? Like, no, I'm not going to let these fascists actually create a jobs program in order to have more control of our lives. That's exactly the opposite of what we need. It's exactly the opposite of what we need. We need way less control by these capitalists. We need way less control by the government generally. We need way less, because honestly, at this stage in the game, a person sitting in a field staring up at the clouds is more valuable to us than the entire industrialized system. A single person sitting in a field, staring at the clouds, doing nothing, is more valuable than every capitalist alive. And I will stand by that. I will die on that hill. Doug Ford wants jobs to serve him eggs. Yeah, that's exactly right. That's a fair point. I was envisioning the guaranteed jobs program that was implemented in the Soviet construction during the Great Break. Yeah, but the Soviets were actually involved in a process of helping one another, right? That's the difference, right? Like, you're talking about a guaranteed jobs program that happens after the revolution. That's different, right? Like, that's different. After a revolutionary government has come in and has like wiped away the capitalists, or in that particular case, the Tsars, or the monarchical system, and actually sets on the process of building a society, right? Sure. Let's all get involved in this process of rebuilding a society and actually creating something that is worth living in. But Pre-revolutionary, it's just fascists creating slave camps. That's what it's going to be. Ontario Works wants to implement a PSW training program. There were articles floating about it recently. Yeah, that's disgusting. That's disgusting. Like, fuck that. That to me, I take a look at that. Like, no. Like, no. A PSW. Sorry, mate. I'm blanking on what this is, though. So I'm going to retract that statement until I know exactly what I'm talking about. Ontario Works wants to implement a paid service work, a potential slave wage. Can you define PSW, bud? I want to participate in a general strike, but I work in a shelter, yeah, and I care about the residents and I wouldn't want to leave them without support, yeah. How can I help without abandoning the people I work with? So this is getting really specific into your own kind of experience. And there are clever ways to do a strike, right? So in Japan, the transit workers went on strike, but they were faced with the same kind of problem that you were faced with, that they didn't want to abandon people who need the transit system, right? And so what did they do? They all did the transit work, but they refused to take fares, right? They actually shut the whole fare system down so that they were still providing the service, but there was no revenue coming in, which serves the public and shows the owners exactly where they stand, which is in the waste bin of history. I don't know the ins and outs of the shelter system, mate. It's really that simple. I don't know the situation you're in. Honestly, you know more about it than I do. And you probably have a better idea as to how that would look like to have some kind of general strike or some kind of system. And I really recommend starting to ask the people you work with. That's probably the best way to go about doing this, is to start talking to the people you work with and start organizing with the people you work with, and start figuring that out on that kind of a level. Yeah. Personal support worker. So Ontario wants to implement a personal support worker training program. There were articles floating about it recently. Oh, I don't know. That sounds nice. Sorry, I completely retract what I'm saying. I thought that you were saying Ontario wants to implement like people on disability have to work in order to get their disability, right? Like that's something that's been floating around in conservative circles all the time. That's gross, right? That's gross. This personal support worker for training programs, sure, like training people to be personal support workers for people with disabilities, yeah, absolutely. And creating a system to connect those two people together, those two groups, the disabled and people who have been trained to be personal support workers, to connect them together seamlessly, right? I think about that in education generally, that like a big problem with our education system is that it's just like we're throwing seeds out into a field and we don't give a crap where any of them really land. We don't have a system that actually is like, oh, the workforce is demanding this amount of work, so let's train workers to connect, right? We just sort of like train workers, and then if we need that many workers, we just go, and then this guy connects, and then these four are told to go fuck themselves. That's really how our system is, right? Instead of saying like, oh, there's 4 jobs that need to happen, so let's train 4 people, and we'll just integrate and train them like Connect, right? We don't really have that, and we've never had that in our operating system. So anyway, that's a whole like education thing, and I have big opinions about education. But anyway, the people who help seniors in their personal support worker, average wage is $16 an hour for personal support workers. Too low. Wage doesn't match labor. Yeah, not even close. I agree. But that's the absolute truth. With you've got to remember, capitalists want the wage to be zero, right? If it's up to the capitalists, the wage will be zero. And it doesn't matter what the job is. It doesn't matter what the skill is. It doesn't matter how much training you need. All of that is just noise, right? If it's up to the capitalists, the wage is zero, right? And everything just kind of builds from that. Like, here's a personal story for you guys. I used to be in funeral services, right? I was the guy who would go to your grandma's house after she died to retrieve her and bring her to the funeral home. I would go to suicide scenes for the police. I would go to crime scenes, again, for the police, for the coroner's office, right? I was responsible for the transportation of the dead. This included like bodies that were just found, right, after several weeks of decomposition, that kind of thing. My role in the funeral service, the funeral service system, was to have responsibility of a van, be responsible for stocking that van, not out of my own pocket, obviously, for that. Have responsibility for the equipment, right, for all of this, to communicate with police officers and other city workers, including doctors and nurses. I would go into hospitals constantly. I was given access to the city morgue, right, these sorts of things. And anybody want to guess how much I was paid? Put it in the chat. How much above minimum wage do you think I was paid for that? Right? Let's have a fun little lottery thing. Let's see who gets close. How many dollars above the minimum wage do you think I was paid to deal with your dead grandmother, to deal with decomposed bodies, to deal with suicide victims, like literally people who had hung themselves in the middle of the street, people who had jumped off bridges, people who had taken a shotgun and blown their own heads off in the middle of a city park, right? Like that's one that I did. How much above the minimum wage do you think I was paid to do that? $18, says John Wick. It wasn't zero, Drew. It wasn't zero. God bless your negativity. I respect it. $3 above minimum. So to do that job, I was paid exactly $1 over the minimum wage, which at that time was $11. So I was paid $12 an hour to do that job, right? So the capitalists want you to be paid zero. That's what they want. They want it to be zero. That's where they're starting. And any increase on that, right? Any increase on that is only done through mass negotiation, right? Between the working class, through strikes and through unions and through all of this, and the government, right? And then any incremental increase on that is only done so that they can just like attract people who don't want to waste their lives working at Starbucks, right? And then any increase from that point is literally just like, once you get into like doctor, lawyer, engineer territory, now you're starting to like build a new class, right? And the building of this new class is very important to maintain and divide the society, right? Capitalists do what they can to divide the society, so they can take like the doctor, lawyers, engineers and pull them into one group. They can take the low income minimum wage workers and pull them into another group. And if they can pit them against each other, they will. Do you think we'll ever see decriminalization of drug and sex work? I mean, I think we should. Like, I think we should do it. Like, just decriminalize all this stuff, right? Just stop it. Get rid of all this nonsense. Like, in terms of the decriminalization of drugs, like this has become so obvious that decriminalizing drugs, like if you treat it like it's a health issue, if you treat it like it's more like a mental health issue and less like it's a crime, right? If you stop throwing people into jail cells for this and you start actually treating it like it's a disease or a sickness or a virus or something, people are able to get over it way easier, right? People are able to get through it, and like all of the crime rates go down. People who relapse, like people who reuse, right? That starts to go down. Like it's so obviously it's so obviously the right thing to do. And I do think like even the liberals are starting to see it. even the liberals are starting to see that, like, yeah, this is like, I mean, as much as I like to crap on the liberals, right? They did legalize or decriminalize marijuana. Now, they didn't pardon anybody. They didn't actually go the extra distance and like actually create a system to pardon anybody. But they did legalize marijuana, and like they should continue down that vein, and they should continue doing that, right? In terms of sex work, our society is so puritanical and prudish in the first place. Like, our view of sex generally, right? This is a whole other topic that I might not get into because it's very big. But like, we are way like disconnected. Our sexual selves and our public selves are completely separated and different things that we are not allowed to intermingle with one another, right? Not really. Like, when you go to work, your little sex person goes into a little box, and you've got to close them up, and you have to be like you have to be genuinely like removed from your you have to take a part of yourself and pretend it doesn't exist. And like, it's not a healthy way to go in a society that, incidentally, like, has anybody noticed that we have these things called incels, right? We have these guys who are literally blowing themselves up and the people around them because they can't get laid. Like, that's a real problem. Right? That's a real problem. Matt Lucas, I remember doing roofing for a summer for $9 an hour, toughest job I ever had and the lowest paying. This is a really good point, by the way, Matt. You'll notice that the more a job pays, the higher up you go on the scale, the easier it gets, right? Because capital doesn't reward hard work. It rewards parasitism. It rewards being a parasite, right? So the closer you get to the ideal of what a capitalist is, i.e. someone who does nothing, makes no decisions, is just a burden on the society completely and hoards wealth, the closer you get to that image, the more capitalists actually respect you and the more they're willing to reward you, right? This is why CEOs are paid so aggressively much, even though CEOs are fundamentally worthless. They are just mascots. That's all a CEO is a mascot for the company to take any like PR slaps or anything like this. But they don't do any work. They don't actually improve the place that they live in. They don't do any of that kind of stuff. At best, they're there to just rubber stamp something that the board of directors tells them to do, right? But they don't actually do anything. And so as you go up the chain of capital, the work gets easier. There's a great comics here, Existential Comics. Existential Comics has a great Twitter feed, and they're always talking about this. How like when you're making $150,000 a year, your job is to answer like 2 emails a day and maybe make 1 decision. Whereas if you're a minimum wage worker, right, you've got to constantly be moving and constantly doing stuff. And people will really crap on you if you take even a little tiny break. And what this does, and this is purposefully done to reinforce the idea that as you begin to ascend any kind of corporate ladder or capitalist system, it's completely acceptable for you to turn around and crap on people who are beneath you, right? It's to reinforce the idea that we are all enemies fighting one another. And that as you go up the ladder, it's completely acceptable for you to crap on the people who are below you and snap at them and accept them to go faster and expect them to do more. And if they want to take a smoke break, you got to flip them off and all this kind of stuff. Like this is how our entire society is structured. It's this constant crab in a bucket, ridiculous nonsense where everybody's constantly fighting each other and at odds with one another. Black market makes strong argument for legalization of sex work. Yep. Like, sex workers are workers. They're just people, right? And the fact that there is at all any separation, the fact that there is any like disconnect between those two is just a sign that of our own puritanism, right? The idea that we don't, and really shows that we don't respect sex workers. We don't respect them at all. We do everything we can to diminish them, disrespect them. push them away from our society, push them into corners, pretend like they don't exist, pretend like they aren't our citizens, pretend like they're not a part of what it is to be a human, right? Here's maybe the most controversial take I'll ever have from the conservative crowd. I actually rather like that there are beautiful half-dressed women walking around the streets. I'm completely fine with that, right? I actually rather enjoy living in a society where beautiful people can be seen and are openly performing. Like, isn't this like a nicer society? Doesn't it sound nice to have like beautiful people around all the time? And if you want to enjoy their sexual services, for the record, I have never actually been involved with a sex worker. So maybe I'm just talking out my ass. But it just seems like if a person wants to go have sex with another person and there's a monetary exchange, so what? Like, so what? I don't get it. I don't get what the concern is. I don't get why there's all this hoopla. I don't get any of this kind of stuff. And this whole, like, won't someone think of the children? Like this argument the conservatives make that, like, oh, a child will see a topless woman and suddenly they'll be evil. Like, shut up. That's what a baby says. Like, that's the stupidest argument I've ever heard in my life, right? Like, sex workers are workers, and the problem isn't the sex worker. The problem is that we have all these straight white men and their straight white women, wives, who live in little boxes and just want to judge other people for their life's choices, when the reality is, like, these guys just need to loosen up. Just loosen up. Like, oh no, you saw some tits. Like, oh, get over yourself. Like, deal with the feelings that are inside of yourself, right? Deal with the reality of what it is to be alive and a human who has sexual desires and sexual needs, right? And to be fair, like, we don't have any institution or any structure or anything that actually does this, right? And the only thing that's actually pushing forward this realization, this acceptance that we are sexual beings, and you can say it as openly as I'm saying now, is the fact that, like, everybody's watching porn on the internet. Like, everyone's looking at this stuff. Like, we love it. We obviously love it. Like, but the thing is that if you do it behind closed doors, right, and you're doing it in your own apartment, all this kind of stuff, and you have your safe space and all that, then nobody can say anything, right? We've all agreed with that. But if it was to suddenly exist on the streets in any capacity whatsoever, if it was to suddenly be part of just who we are and how our society is, and if we had a more relaxed attitude about sex genuinely, oh, well, now we're a godless people, and oh, the wrath of God is going to come and get us and all of this. And I'm just like, how obscene is it to live in a society where everyone wants to have sex? Sex is required so that we can reproduce. It feels good and it's built in to who we are, but if you engage in it at all, you're dirty. We're insane. Like, we're insane. We've lost our minds, right? And this just flows into exactly what I think about capitalism generally, which is that it's been completely inverted. Our entire belief system, everything we believe is actually wrong and has been completely inverted. Right? And sex workers are the ones that are really taking it on the nose, because we are taking our desires and our own sexual energy, and instead of dealing with it like adults, we're just deflecting it onto these sex workers and constantly enforcing that they're dirty and filthy and worthless, and they're the problem. They're the problem. It's not my own inability to deal with me as a sexual creature and my own sexual being. I have to deal with that in this tight, monogamous relationship that I have with one woman, where we look at each other and we're like, okay, I've got you and they've got me. Oh, okay, we're together. Okay, so we can be filthy, dirty, ridiculous animals together, but it's for a good reason, because we're going to have a kid. And so that's okay, and God will forgive us, right? Like, this is manic. This is manic. We need to, like, breathe, relax, go sit in the field, look at some clouds, calm the fuck down, right? Calm the fuck down. Right? Sex is normal. It's who we are as people. It should be made as safe as possible. The people who want to engage in sex work should be able to do it however they want to do it. and as safely as possible, and we should decriminalize it 100%, and we should relax all of these restrictions 100%. Because it's just so, like, the more you think about it, the weirder and the more grotesque it actually gets. Where you're just like, why do we care at all? Like, why do we care? Like, if we do care, why aren't we saying we got to make sure everybody's safe? But we don't say that, right? We're not interested in that. Okay, I got to move on from this before everyone starts to think I'm a dirty perv. Okay. I can give an example of an easy job being a commercial actor for a half hour. The rate is $50 to $60 per hour or more. Granted, it's short-term gig work. Yeah, I was involved in the artistic scene and the theater scene generally, and those jobs pay well because they are intermittent, and also because there's actually fairly strong unions in theater and film and television, right? That they know that in order to have people who are actually available to do this work in the first place, that the jobs are so few and far between in the first place, that if they don't pay well, first they'll have union problems, right? But then also on top of that, they just won't have workers. Like, they just won't have anybody who's actually able to do this. And but really, generally, when it comes to film and television, like, if you haven't made it by the time you're, at this point, 14, I think 14, you're probably always just going to be a bit actor off on the side, for the most part. Unless you have, like, a Kevin Sorbo-style narrative where literally you're just walking down a street in Europe and somebody's like, you're so beautiful, I want to shoot you, right? Like, unless you have that experience, yeah, like, you have to have, like, acting or connected parents in the first place, and then from there you can maybe you'll get a shot, right? And that's like Drew Barrymore's story. Like, that's almost every actor that you like. That's Robert Downey Jr. Like, that's his story, right? Any of these Marvel guys, that's their story, right? Like, they started when they were young because their parents were connected. And that's the only way that anybody can actually get involved in any serious way in the artistic scene, for real. I mean, you can do what you're suggesting, which is having like this kind of bit stuff. But okay. Well, I've caught up with you guys. You guys had me going for a long time there. So let's move on to more of what the news of the day is. This is great, guys. This is my first feed. How many people are actually here? There's 40 playbacks, 11 of you here. That's like 11 times better than I thought it was going to be. I thought it was going to be absolutely nobody. I thought you all were just going to be like, oh, John, who gives a crap about him? Or just you wouldn't know about it. You wouldn't know about it. So I would say that this is a resounding success. I'm going to try to do this. I am actually going to try to do this every day. I'm going to try to turn this into like every evening. Right now, I'm saying 6 to 9, 3 hours. We'll see. That's just a kind of a guess. It might be too much for me. It could be too exhausting. We'll see. So far, I'm really super enjoying it, though. Like, this is great. I hope you guys are enjoying it. I hope you're having a good time. I hope you're enjoying the world that is around you. I hope you're trying to enjoy the world that's around you. Oh, my God. That's one thing I try to end all my videos with, right? It's just, you guys are doing really great. Like, what with the nonsense that's going on in the world and the way that this whole thing is in free fall collapse, and we're all pretending like it's not, like, that's probably the worst of it. And the reason why it warms my heart to see so many of you here right now, and I'm glad the channel is starting to grow more and more, because like, the pretending like it's not in a collapse is the thing that's driving me the craziest. That people stand up and say like, oh yeah, the economy will bounce right back after COVID and all this kind of stuff. It's just, Lonnie Kratz just saying hi, new to this and a lot of this, so find your videos, very informative. Thank you so much, Lonnie. I appreciate that. I really do. Like, I try to stay informed. I try to be real with what's happening in front of us. I try to stay away from delusion. I love the video. Close. Good luck. We're going to need it. Yeah. As I said, my background is theater, film, and television, so I'm really aware of slogans. Slogans are something that the right does way better than the left. You ever notice this? Right? Like Doug Ford does like for the people, right? And that's a great slogan. For the people, what a great slogan, right? Whereas the left is always just like unifying the perspective of forward momentum. You're just like, what? It's so stupid. Like, it's so dumb. Like the right is which is great because I think it really illustrates like the right is better at reductive thinking, right? Like they're better at reducing things. That's why how are you going to pay for it? One of the greatest propaganda slogans that has been spread around is absolutely how are you going to pay for it. Like as if there isn't this like blatant, obvious, overt raise taxes on the rich. That's how you're going to pay for it. Like obviously that's the answer to that question. But you put that slogan into the mouth of anybody who's skeptical, how are you going to pay for it, right? Then it forces people on the left to actually create a technical response, right? But simultaneously also create a technical response to people who have no idea what they're talking about in the first place, right? Like, and so it's designed explicitly to calcify and prevent the conversation from actually happening in any kind of meaningful way. Okay, guys, I'm going to pause for just 1 second. My little puppy wants some more peanut butter, and I have to use the bathroom. Okay, I'll be right back. Okay, buddy. Peanut butter puppy time, peanut butter puppy time, peanut butter puppy time. Way back, way back, way back, way back. Gonna get some peanut butter, my little puggy boy. Gonna get some peanut butter. Gonna have it, gonna have it. Gonna have some peanut butter. Yeah, you're gonna like it good. Peanut butter, peanut butter, peanut butter jelly time. Not the jelly though. Your little tummy couldn't handle any jelly. Your little tummy couldn't handle any jelly, buddy. What's that? What's that? What's that? You gonna have some peanut butter? There you go, little boy. There you go. Okay. Okay. Oh, one love, I have but one love. One love only for you. Oh, and we're back. Hope you guys are doing well. Hope the stream is still streaming and doing what it's doing. Oh my goodness, I'm amazed that this is going as well as it is. So thanks for being here. Okay, let's move on with the news, and I'm loving the commentary, guys. I'm loving the questions. I love to. If you haven't noticed, I'm a bit of a talker. I have it inside me to talk a lot. I'm so looking forward to getting a haircut. This whole side of my head, I just want to shave it all down. I'm looking at myself right now on my channel here, and I'm just like, oh no, this has to go. Like this side of my head is gonna just shave right off. I'm gonna keep this nice and long. I'm gonna keep this going, see how long I can get it. But boy, does this need to go. And then I'm gonna see if I can get it faded into the beard, right? See if I can take control over that. We'll see. We'll see. Anyway. UN committee calls on Canada to respond to claims of racist violence against the Makawa fishers. What an absurdist story this is, eh? Like, let these guys fish. Like, who gives a crap? The amount of fish that these guys are fishing is like, it's just weensy little, whereas like corporations are going in there and basically like harvesting out. The fact that the UN has gotten involved in this, the fact that anything, like, it's just absurd. UN Nations Committee has asked Ottawa to respond to claims it didn't properly intervene in or investigate racist violence against Makawa fishers in Nova Scotia last fall. The Committee of the Elimination of Racial Discrimination outlined its request to Leslie Norton, Canada's permanent representative to the UN. Like this, it's stories like this is the reason why the UN won't let Canada on any of its boards. Like, what was the name of that board? Hope you're doing well too, Brandon. Thanks for being here, bud. Thank you so much. The first stream is doing really well. Yeah, happy to be part of history. Bit optimistic, but I figure if I can get to the same level as like Mr. Dress Up, I've done okay. So, does anybody know the name of that UN organization? We were trying to get into a UN like body, a UN peace thing. Oh, that's going to drive me friggin' crazy. It's going to drive me crazy. I got to look it up. Canada, UN, rejected. Being rejected. The UN says vote. Come on, does anybody remember? Security Council. Thank you, Jeff with 2 dogs. What kind of dogs do you have, Jeff? The Security Council, like, there's absolutely no way we're going to get onto that kind of thing, right? Like, the UN is I really like the UN, right? The UN it's really clearly trying very hard to fulfill its mandate. And its mandate is very clearly to ensure that everybody has information about what's actually going on, and that information is actually truthful, right? Like, it would be so nice to live in a world. It'd be so nice to live in a world where there weren't vetoes in the UN, right? It'd be so nice if the United States could just not veto anything that comes out of the UN, because I actually think we would have a more egalitarian world, right? We would just live in a world where people were more. Where nations were more level with one another, and there was more sincerity going on, and right, like what the UN did, like there's this whole look at Venezuela thing that conservatives were doing to try to dismiss socialism, right? For the last like 2 years, it's been this way, where people are like, "Oh, look at Venezuela. Obviously, socialism doesn't work. Look at Venezuela," and it was like they were trying to be like checkmate about it, right? They would try to be like checkmate. Look at Venezuela. Conversation's over. Dab, right? Like it's but it's such a reductive. It's another one of these slogans that's like so reductive, so that even a rural farmer could just be like, "Look at Venezuela," as if they've won the argument. But then the UN comes along and is like, "Oh, I have a report on. We sent somebody to Venezuela to talk to literally everybody and see kind of what's actually happening. And did you guys know that the United States is inflicting sanctions on Venezuela? Were you guys aware of that? Did you guys know? Did you know that the United States has been inflicting sanctions in Venezuela all this time? Oh, and did you know that those sanctions are the reason why everything is collapsing in Venezuela?" And what it really showed is like, it doesn't matter what your economic system is. It doesn't matter if it's socialist or communist or capitalist or anything. That if you inflict economic warfare on a system, it's going to collapse, right? Like that's what this report showed. And we have the UN to thank for this. And I do think that the UN generally is working for peace. That they're more interested in peace than they are in war generally. I do think that there are people in the UN who see war as, their perspective is that it is an unfortunate necessity in many cases, but I don't think that that's the overwhelming opinion. And even if that were the case, I do think that even that position would have prevented like complete atrocities like the Iraq War, the Afghanistan war, the Libyan war, those poor fucking Libyans. Nothing breaks my heart more. Like one of the largest atrocities of the last 100 years, since like the nuclear bombing of Hiroshima and Nagasaki, has been what happened in Libya. What a sad story. What a sad story. Okay. You guys are being quiet, so I'm just going to move on. Far-right Twitter is so salty today, I love to see it. Most people rejected his message. There's a link between the far-right and anti-maskers. Shut up! They hated Jagmeet because he told them the truth. This is kind of weird. Don't you think this is kind of weird? This is a Tom Chick pamphlet. If you guys aren't familiar with Tom Chick, I only know him because my background is evangelical Christian. I grew up as an evangelical Christian, as a fundamentalist. And there were these pamphlets that were distributed by a fellow named Tom Chick, and they were far-right cartoons that were filled like that, and some of them were just nonsense. There's one that's like Dungeons and Dragons is evil. Yeah, Dungeons and Dragons is evil, and like outright like saying that like Islam is a false religion, like all the kind of stuff that you expect to see out of a far right evangelical group. But this is sort of weird in my view because it places Jagmeet as Jesus, which this whole thing's a bit odd. It's making me just a touch uncomfortable. And the idea that this is coming from far right Twitter, and that so there's a lot to unpack here, and I don't think I want to do it anymore. I play Heroes of the Storm, so you're going to see that come up on this feed from time to time. Hashtag deal with it. Peel region to offer thousands of vaccine appointments at Doses After Dark clinic this weekend. Great. Let's get that vaccine around as best we can for as effective as it's going to be. Ontario advised to stay the course with pandemic restrictions. Yeah. Or restrictions, rather. We're going to be in... These restrictions are going to exist. We're still going to be doing this time next year, guys. Like, this pandemic has been mishandled and bungled so badly that we're still going to be dealing with it this year, right? Whereas nations like China, who dealt with it correctly in the first place, they're just going to be striding forward, right? We're going to fall further and further behind because that's what capitalism does. Capitalism is a regressive system that regresses societies. Never mind Justin Trudeau, conservative insiders fear Aaron O'Toole's toughest election opponent must be Doug Ford. This has probably got to be saying that, like, that they said this the last time with Andrew Scheer, right? That like Andrew Scheer, exclusive. Sorry, can't see it. Don't have the money. Please be sure to donate to my Patreon, right? The Canadian Commie at Patreon. I'll use that money to buy subscriptions to this kind of stuff. They said the last thing with the last time with Scheer, right? That Doug Ford really got in the way of Scheer's chances of being elected, and it's probably true, right? And it's probably true that Doug Ford is going to get in the way of Aaron O'Toole. And you know what's funny? Wasn't it Pierre Poliver? I'm sorry, I've only ever read Pierre's last name. Polivre. I don't know what you're saying that in regards to, Drew. Sorry. But I actually like Aaron O'Toole as a person, right? Let me really be clear on this. Like, as a person, I think he's desperately trying to move his party to the center. He's desperately trying to respond to the demands. And I know who you're talking about. It's Peter MacKay. Peter MacKay was O'Toole's election opponent in the last. Are you talking about the conservative? Like when they elected O'Toole their leader, it was Peter MacKay. It came down to him, the two of them. Which, fun fact, Peter MacKay, I used to serve Peter MacKay at the toy store that I worked at before the toy store got rid of me. So Seemed like a good old boy generally, and this is my general thing about Aaron O'Toole. Like Aaron O'Toole seems like he's desperate to pull the party to the center. I think he's sincere about dealing with climate change, even though I think he would be worse at doing it than even the Liberals. His party is just so insistent that they need to be a bunch of crazy right wing kooks, right? Like they need to exist in this space. Like literally, they put a measure up in their convention saying climate change is real and we should do something about it, and they voted it down. Like that's gotta how is that not the end of the Conservative Party, man? Like that's embarrassing. And I just imagine O'Toole sitting there just being like, oh, why did they do it? It's such a slam dunk. It's such a slam dunk to do, right? And like it's so funny because like it really does like conservatives are out of their minds. Like they're absolutely out. Like I call them a death cult for what they've done. It's like absolutely insane. But like at least they're honest, right? Like you would think that a bunch of like cynical, power-hungry corporatists would understand in their heart of hearts that if you're put to a measure that says, "Hey, maybe is climate change real? We all here in the real world think that climate change is real. Do you?" You would think that they would just go, "Well, we better lie," right? Like, well, we better lie. Right? Even if they didn't believe it, they should at least be like, well, we'll just lie about it. Nope. These guys are just like, they're going to go to their graves just being like, climate change is a hoax. It was a way for China to take over our industry. Like, oh boy. So my heart goes to you, Aaron O'Toole. I disagree with your politics generally, but I don't think you're a bad guy. I just think that you're never going to be the leader of this place because you're like carrying an anvil around, you know? You're just carrying this horrible anvil around, which is your own constituents. So, too bad for you. The Tugs, Tobermory, Ontario. Isn't that nice? Always nice to break things up. A little bit of underwater. I don't really know what I'm looking at, honestly. The Tugs. I guess it's just a boat that sank and it's something of a feature in Tobermory. Which, by the way, if you have the chance to go to Tobermory, Ontario, it's beautiful there. It's right on the end of it's like a what's that called? A peninsula? It's like the end of a peninsula. There's this little town. It's got a nice little bowl of Hygeia. Well, what is the evidence humans affect the climate? Go to nasa.com. And but so Tobermory is right at the end of this peninsula. There's a lighthouse, and it's just this quaint, small little town where you can take a ferry. It'll take you across the lake. I forget what is that. That's not Superior. That's not Superior. Is it Erie? Okay, guys. Now we're looking at a map. You're gonna find out very quickly if you hang out with me for any length of time. I love Google Maps. I think Google Maps is the greatest invention of all time. Where are you, Tobermory? Tobermory, Ontario. Yeah, Tobermory. Right, you can see you got to go up from Toronto, right, through Owen Sound, and then it's right at the end of this peninsula. You can take this ferry, Manitoulin Island, Lake Huron. I didn't even include Huron. Oh my goodness. Oh, the embarrassment. I'm just getting geo-slammed. And you can go over to Manitoulin Island. There's great camping, Manitoulin Island. I know, buddy. I know, it's nothing. It's nothing. Buddy, my dog is getting all burfy. He's getting all barky. He's like, John, you're not talking about politics. What are you talking about this bullshit for? he's being a good producer. He's keeping me on time. And then Cove Island is really gorgeous. really beautiful. If I'm not mistaken, there's actually a couple of private places here, but great canoeing around this area. I highly, 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 highly recommend it. At least to visit. I think living there might get a little dry after a while. Anyway, that's a nice little divergent point. You know what? While we're here, I got to tell you guys, I love looking at maps generally. I just love looking at maps. I always come over here and I take a look at China, and now I'm on the map, so we're gonna do a quick breakdown of World War III and the unfolding of World War III. Right? So here's Afghanistan, right? Because nobody actually talks about any of this stuff this way. Nobody actually just shows a world map and is like, oh, here's what's going on. So the Americans have said that they're going to get out of Afghanistan this time, guys. It's going to happen, yeah, for sure. I think the best that we can expect is that they'll just privatize this war. And there's a good reason why they're never, ever going to get out of Afghanistan, right? They're never going to get out of Afghanistan because it has a nice little border here with Iran, right? Who they are attempting to depose and overthrow and destroy. Like, I don't think that can be debated. I think that they want to destroy Iran. They're just a little bit like, how do we actually do this? Because Iran has pretty tight ties now with China as well as Russia, right? And as we can see, Russia and China are fairly on board there. And China also has a pretty good connection through the South China Sea. So Afghanistan is connected to Iran, Turkmenistan, Uzbekistan, Tajikistan, and also you'll see it's really cute how this works. There's this little tiny inlet here, like, isn't that fun how that works? Where Afghanistan actually extends and touches the Chinese border, right? Funnily enough, touches the Chinese border in Xinjiang, right? Xinjiang, where the genocide is happening, quote unquote genocide. When in reality, what is actually happening is that they funnel Uyghurs from Xinjiang through Afghanistan into Turkmenistan, right? And getting them even into Syria in some cases, East Turkestan. I won't get into those politics. That's fine. So they'll funnel people into Turkmenistan, into Afghanistan, into China in order to do terrorist activity, right? They've even sent them over into Syria to get them trained, right? And who's they in this situation? The CIA, obviously. The CIA. And so they send terrorist groups into China, into the Xinjiang region, right? And why? Why are they sending Uyghur terrorists into Xinjiang? Well, they're sending them there to disrupt the Belt and Road Initiative, right? Which originates and starts here in Xinjiang, right? The purpose of the Belt and Road Initiative is to send high-speed rail up through Russia, over here, connecting to Ukraine, Belarus, Poland, like all of this kind of stuff, and then connect it over here. Because you actually take a look at the world map, if China can get trade routes connected by land all over the place, which is the Belt and Road Initiative, then if America comes and shuts them down in the South China Sea, where about $5 trillion of trade happens in the South China Sea, and if they can shut them down in the South China Sea, then they don't... Buddy, we're almost out of peanut butter here. We're almost out of peanut butter. And if they can shut them down in the South China Sea, well, if the Chinese have the Belt and Road Initiative up and running, and it's not being disrupted, they can continue trading with most of the rest of the world. Who will they not be able to trade with? Well, Canada, the United States, Mexico, and then South America, right? But really, when you consider, like, China has way more trading opportunities by land. Their land connections are way, way more important than even their ocean or sea connections, which is important, but really what's going to end up happening over time is it's the United States and Canada that are the ones that are going to isolate themselves, right? Like, they've got sanctions basically on South America. They've got sanctions on Russia. They've got sanctions on China, right? Who don't they have sanctions on? Like Europe, Australia, right? Like, so over time, it's the Americans that are isolating themselves while the Chinese are building larger and larger and larger trade routes through this Belt and Road Initiative that the Americans are attempting to disrupt through CIA PSYOP organizations, through terrorist organizations being funneled through Afghanistan into China. And so they're never going to give Afghanistan up. Afghanistan might as well become an American province, right? Or a state, rather. They're never going to give this up. And also, Afghanistan acts as a good staging platform for them to get into Pakistan, right? So Pakistan has nuclear bombs, right? So if Pakistan all of a sudden goes like, we've got nuclear bombs, right? Maybe they can jump from Afghanistan into Pakistan and do something about it. That's their perspective, right? Anyway. So, and I said earlier, right? Like maybe they'll get into the South China Sea. Well, why do you think America has been pounding on the Free Hong Kong movement, right? Why do you think they've been funneling billions of dollars into Hong Kong to try to create an independence movement in Hong Kong, right? It's 100% because they know that if Hong Kong was able to become independent, or at least able to create enough chaos to be disruptive, that America can actually get troops in there, and America can actually, if America can get a foothold here in Hong Kong, and the same story is happening in Taiwan. The same story is, it's the same story that happened in Vietnam and Cambodia and Thailand and all these places throughout the 70s and 60s. You get a foothold here, then you can prevent trade in the South China Sea, right? And if you can prevent trade in the South China Sea, it's a major, major problem, right? America already has essentially a military base here in South Korea, right? So they're like breathing down China's neck. Here's Japan, right? America has large-scale control of Japan and South Korea militarily, right? Like, what do you think's happening here? So they're going to do what they can. Also worth pointing out, there was where did that happen? Where they there was remember that ship that got stuck? Yeah, that happened right over here. This ship, the Suez Canal, right? The ship got caught right there. Here's the canal. I love looking at maps, guys. I love looking at maps. If you want me to stop looking at the map, just say it in the chat, please. I'm such a map nerd, for real. But there's 13 of you now, whereas there 11 before, so I'll take that as a good sign. The Suez Canal goes right up here, right? And you can see it goes right over, cuts the whole way. Boink, comes out of Port Said, I should say. And Milo, that's good, buddy. That's good. I know, buddy. I know. Maps are scary. And what does that let the Chinese do? Because the Chinese are trading. It lets them go over here and go whoop through here instead of going all the way around in order to get here. And so there's this like great like, is it a CIA op? Are they trying to disrupt Chinese trade into this thing? I don't know. I do think it's likely that it was just a mess up. Like things get stuck and clogged all the time, and like this also doesn't help the Americans very much to have that kind of thing blockaded. So, but it's fun and it's worth pointing out. So, do I have anything else to say on the map in regards to World War III and the Cold War that's happening with China, right? Like, America has destroyed Iraq. Their primary allies are Saudi Arabia, who is creating a genocide in Yemen and also high-level suppression in Oman, right? They've all but destroyed Syria. Like, these maps are going to be redrawn, right? Like, Syria and Iraq are going to be redrawn, and they're going to create new territories. Probably to explicitly give Americans claim on the military bases they already have on the border against Iran. And I mean, the same thing is also happening along the Russian border, right? Like, they're creating all kinds of NATO. NATO is forming all kinds of patterns. Like, and the news on this is so hilarious because they're like, if Americans move troops right up against Russia's borders, it doesn't get talked about. But if Moscow moves troops within its own borders, right? If Russia moves troops within its own borders, it's international news, right? Oh, it's a scandal. Like, it's so freaking ridiculous. It's so bloody stupid. And what's so funny about how like the geography of this is all working out? It's very difficult to believe that Australia stays on America's side. Like politically, they've been sort of allied for a long time because everybody's white. But eventually, the economics of it is just going to get to the point where the Australians are just not going to be able to keep that game up. Robert G, hey from York region. Hey bud, how you doing? I'm down in the beaches. Oh, it's good to see you. And I'm just talking about World War III. the unfolding ridiculousness of it. The unfolding ridiculous nonsense that is this kind of thing. I don't know. I think I'm okay with the map. I think let's go back to the day's news. Thanks, Tobo Murray. You got us on the map. I love talking about the map. Any excuse to open that map up. It's time we made unions sexy again. We're literally watching the largest labor movement in modern American history happen in the form of paper signs taped to the windows of fast food and fast casual restaurants. Yeah, it's actually the truth, right? Like there's this like. The revolution will not be televised, right? We all kind of heard that phrase going through the 90s, maybe into the early 2000s. It's fascinating to see what's happening. I think it's mainly happening in the United States, but I haven't seen much in terms of Canada. If somebody wants to counter me on that, please do. I would love to be countered on that. But it just looks like people are mad as hell, and they're not going to take it anymore, right? That they're sick and tired of the abuse. They're sick and tired of these low-wage jobs. I feel like what happened to workers in this pandemic is absolutely disgusting. Like, workers were told that they were essential, right? They went from being completely disposable and replaceable to being essential heroes who didn't get a pay raise at all. And some of them did get a bit of a pay raise, which was immediately taken away from them. Right? Like, so I don't blame, why would anybody go work at these stupid places? I'm not going to go work at a friggin' Burger King right now. Are you kidding me? Absolutely not. My friend has been sending me some of your videos. Good content. My main concern is that even with UBI, what's to stop landlords from charging just above what's affordable? Good question, Robert. We were talking about that earlier, but I'll address it. Nothing. Right? Landlords are dicks. We should get rid of them. We should... the basic income, in my view, is an emergency transitionary measure away from capitalism, but it doesn't actually... It's a reform to the capitalist system, right? It doesn't actually stop the capitalists from being what they are, which are parasites that are completely worthless, that provide no value, and in fact... provide kind of counter value. They diminish the value of our society. They suppress the value of our society. And so the ultimate solution is to just get rid of these guys, right? Like we all lost our minds a little while ago being like, yeah, we should abolish the monarchy, get rid of the queen. And I'm like, yeah, let's abolish the monarchy. Landlords, right? That's a monarchical system. We should get rid of it. We should nationalize these enormous skyscrapers filled with apartments, right? Put in some rent control, drop rent way down, tell these guys to get bent, right? Like, and the idea that we can't do that, that's what we were doing in the 70s, right? We were doing that in the 70s and the 60s, and then we started to privatize these places, right? And so, no, get rid of these guys. It's a joke. But then what's the alternative? Assigned housing? That's a bit worrisome for me. No, I don't think you need to have assigned housing. Like, I think that you can basically have a system as it is now. It's just that instead of the organizing force being capitalists, the organizing force is just like the State Department, right? It's just instead of you trying to pay rent to an organization that is mandated to ever increase your rent perpetually and forever, that it's being mandated by a group who actually has the opposite mandate, right? That you mandate it and you build it in so that, okay, we're constantly trying to drop the rent. How low can we drop the rent as opposed to how high can we drop the rent? And in terms of usability for you and me, like, I want to move to a place, I will look on this website that says what are the available units. Beep, boop, boop. Hey, can I come see that unit? Sure, yeah. And then you go, you take a look at it, you sign some paperwork, you move in, right? Like, in terms of the usability from the user end, it's not going to be any different, right? It's just the structure of who is controlling what the rent should be is going to look a lot different. And right now, it's these capitalists who have every incentive in the world to just jack the rent as high as they want, to make things unaffordable for everybody. And we can get into like a part of a reason why the rent is getting so outrageous, and partially why that's getting absurd is because there's so many foreign buyers and so many wealthy people and billionaires who have turned our housing market into a speculative gambling casino, right? Like, that would be a way to reform the system and to drop rents without doing the structural change that I'm talking about, right? If you just simply, like, if you passed legislation to say, if you try to pass legislation that's just like use it or lose it, right? Like, billionaires will buy a property and then just sit on it empty because they don't care if it's rented or not. They don't need that tiny little passive income. And in fact, it's kind of a pain in the ass to set up any kind of system in order to rent that out when they could just sit on it and then in a year or two turn it around and sell it for for double the price, right? Oh, what's going on, my little guy? What's going on, my little guy? What's going on, my little guy? Here, we're gonna have a little show. Here's Milo. Trying to find any sort of living arrangement in York region for $500 a month, yeah, is like a fruitless pursuit. Yeah. $500 every month is actually kind of a lot of money for me to allocate. Yeah, dude, like average rent is actually like $1,000 right now. Like, that's the average. $500 maybe 10 years ago, you could have got away with that. Good luck with that, bud. Like, good luck with that. You're gonna need it on that count. Sorry, guys, I'm itching my nose so much. I feel like I got to draw attention to it at this point, but I don't know why my nose is so stupid itchy, and it's kind of gross. So I'm just like, but what can I do? What can I do? What was I saying about? Right. So, and there are systems that currently exist that are in place now that are exactly what I'm talking about, right? There are state-run, like what's called affordable housing, right? Like, these exist. They're functional. They reduce the price of the rent. We've just privatized so much of it based on this false ideology of trickle-down economics that doesn't work, never did, and it doesn't work for obvious and clean reasons. Like, why should an institution that's otherwise functioning suddenly work better or produce cheaper product if you put a parasite onto the side of it who adds no value, creates does no work, right? Simply the act of paying the wage of the capitalist that owns the system is going to either increase wages or lower and diminish service, right? It's built in. Hey, Dave. Hey, first live stream. Nice. Thanks, bud. That'd be a good video on housing and getting rid of landlords. Yeah, I've done that a couple of times. You know what? That's a good point, though. I've been sort of like, recently things have sort of been stewing, right? There hasn't been like a really big news story, you know? Like, it just seems like it's just kind of tiny little adjustments in perspective on stories that are already existent. Trudeau caught off guard. Yeah, Saudi arms. Oh, the Saudi arms deal. The Saudi arms deal is definitely worth talking about, because isn't it funny how like it's completely fallen into the background? I don't really find them to be functional because I'm pretty sure you cannot have more than 10,000 cash or assets. So I have to chew into all my savings in order to be edible. I don't think I understand your statement, Robert. Sorry. I'm not necessarily going to play this because I don't know what YouTube's rules are or anything like this, but like the Trudeau administration being involved in the Saudi arms deal, like the fact that the Liberals are paying are giving weapons to the Saudi Arabians who are then in turn enacting a genocide tells me that this guy is unelectable. Like, this guy should not be elected ever for any position whatsoever. But Canadians either don't care or they just seem to be ignorant of the fact that we are selling weapons to a genocidal nation. Oh, I see what you're saying, Robert. You're saying that Yeah, like no. Your critique of the state systems that exist currently is accurate, because they've been restructured to not be as usable, right? That they're the ones that currently do exist to the level that they do exist on, exist only to facilitate like an ever narrowing group of people who are steadily more and more falling into this category of being completely abandoned, right? And because there's more and more, like these units are diminishing more and more and being privatized more and more people, such as yourself, right, are being abandoned, right? Like, and they're going to create more restrictions and create more rules and create more legislation with the implicit goal of eventually privatizing all of these. That's the goal, right? Like, capitalists don't want these places to exist. They want to bribe a politician, get him elected, have him come in place, make the state-funded or state-run apartment complexes less accessible and less usable, and just tighten them until finally they're so weak that the politician can finally throw up his hands and say, well, we've done everything we can, but, government doesn't work, so let's privatize it, right? That's the objective. And so your complaint is completely accurate. Like, it's completely accurate, but it's been structured that way, and it's been structured that way on purpose, right? And it doesn't have to be that way. Moving on. Canada to get 2 million, Pfizer, BioNTech, blah, 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 blah. Why isn't this being talked about more? USA, Israel abusing Palestinian people and bombing mosques. USA, walking right by. Yeah, that's the story. That's just, yeah, an 11-year waiting list. That's just the supply, right? Like, that's if there's this really wonderful chart, and I wonder if I could find it. Affordable Housing Canada chart. I wonder if I could be so lucky. Nope. None of this is what I'm thinking or talking about. Anyway, there's this great chart that I saw that showed the amount of affordable housing units that exist in Canada. And in the 70s, like if that's the chart, in the 70s it's like right up here. And now it's like way down here, right? So of course there's an 11-year waiting list, because people need this stuff. I'm thinking of just buying a motorhome and living in that. Yeah, I've been there, bud. I've been there, right? I one time I actually like moved out east on a hope and a prayer that I was going to find some kind of support or some kind of somebody had kind of bullshitted me and said that there was work there when there wasn't any, and the whole thing fell apart and all that kind of stuff. But like, I've definitely been where you've been, where it's just like, it's at this point that you start to think, like, hey, couldn't we just like go out in the boonies and create a commune, really make a go of it, start playing Stardew Valley in real life, right? Maybe we could turn our whole lives into Stardew Valley, right? There's something honest about that. There's something nice about that. Yeah, I'm thinking of buying a motorhome and living in that. That's almost me every single day, dude. I feel you. I definitely feel you. Election success for UK politicians backing universal basic income. Yes, I've been hearing that the elections in the UK went really on the side of Labour. I'm still learning about that, so I don't know too much about it. In fact, why don't we take a look? UK election results. Well, I'll learn how to spell someday. Election results. Conservatives hurt Labour in its former heartland. I don't understand why. Like, when I type in election results for Canada or any of this kind of stuff, I get like a really nice chart and a really kind of thing. Anytime I look for the UK, I just am like, can I just see what who got what, right? Like, can I see it? And it just seems, there you go. Labour wins as the mayor of London. Labour Party in London. Very good. As you can tell, I'm supportive of Labour and Jeremy Corbyn generally. And what's interesting about that discussion, the UK discussion, is that Like the divide between the older generation and the younger generation can't be clearer, right? If you're over the age of 60, you're voting conservative. If you're under the age of 60, you're voting Labor. And it really is just like, boom, it is that clear cut. And and like that seems to be true across the board globally, that the only thing that is keeping the conservative kind of viewpoint alive are these detached, out of touch, ever growing in dementia old people, right? Like that if you don't actually live in the world that like young people lived in, right? It just, like, you hear old people and they say the stupidest stuff. They're just like, oh, I paid for university with a part-time job. It's like, yeah, university cost you $500, right? Like when I went to university, it was like $10,000 a year. Like, what the hell are you talking about? And they don't know what they're talking about, right? And that's how conservatism survives. Gaza Ministry of Health, number of Palestinians killed now up to 20. Yeah, what's going on in Israel and Palestine? It's just ridiculous, and it's been going on forever. And it's like the burning heart. Like, you want to see the dark heart of the American empire? Just go take a look at Israel. And I'm going to get accused of being an anti-Semite for that, but it's the absolute truth. Like, it's a massive, many generations long genocide that's been going on against the Palestinian people. It's overt. It's obvious. And the Americans are doing everything they can to make sure it happens. Throwing out some skit ideas for SNL. What should I do? Pay your fair share of taxes. Thanks, Elon. Elon Musk, like, the worship of Elon Musk is, it's gotten to, like, sycophantic levels. There's a great podcast that I watch. Some news guy. Cody Johnson. I'm not going to play him, but I'll show him. Maybe I'm just being... Sure, this will do. Ad. So sorry. Oh, God. So, this guy, right? Some more news. Oh, this isn't the right place. Some more news. This guy. This is the guy. He just did an Elon Musk episode. Some more news. You guys just go to this guy and subscribe him right now. Just go to this guy, subscribe him right now. He and his crew are brilliant. They are brilliant. Yeah, he had a new one, and this is it. Is that it right there? Elon Musk is not your friend. Yeah, brilliant episode. Cody Johnson and his crew are brilliant. He really captures the manic desperation of the millennial generation, the simultaneously like despondent while also attempting to maintain some kind of rational sanity, while trying to be truthful while simultaneously grappling with sort of the bleak absurdity of it, of what's happening. And his Elon Musk episode is absolutely perfect, right? You walk away from that video believing what is fundamentally true about Elon Musk. He's the son of an apartheid emerald miner. Not even a miner. Like, he owned emerald mines in an apartheid. He doesn't know anything about anything, right? He doesn't invent anything. He just positions himself and does what all capitalists do, which is lie very well, right? That's all. That's the only thing capitalists are good at, is propaganda, lying well. Yeah, he used to write for Cracked. That's right. He comes from Cracked, and he's doing very well for himself, and he should be. Like, he and his crew are really, really sharp. Like, sometimes I think to myself, like, oh, I should stop posting daily, and I should instead do what he does and try to put together some kind of like well-formulated, well-researched kind of thing. But he does it with such brilliance and precision that I don't think I could ever match it. He's very, very good. Bought a fan of the puppet shtick whose voices are intimidating, but the content is great. Yeah. I'm also not a fan of shawarma. And what's so funny about oh yeah, he has a crew as well. Yeah, for sure he does. But what's so funny about Shwarmo is that he knows Shwarmo is annoying. Like he knows that a large section of his of the people who come and view are annoyed by Shwarmo or Shwarbo or whatever his stupid name is. Yeah, yeah, for sure. Having a crew would help. It would wipe me out. Yeah, you're absolutely right. And honestly, I feel like I've found my shtick, right? That what I'm doing here, this live cast thing, is something I'm going to keep trying to do. And already I can tell you it's been successful. You guys have been wonderful. This experience has been really great for me as a more live caster, like that kind of thing. And also the smaller videos, like the smaller 15-minute videos, I think hit more on that kind of Rick rant, if you're familiar with Rick Mercer and the Rick rants. And so that kind of structure, I think, is more, because I do want to be updating daily. That's really where the difference between me and somebody like Cody Johnson is that he's updating like once a week, it looks like. Yeah, about once a week. Whereas I am trying to update daily. And I think that he has like this structure that creates like a news thing, like the news dude. And it's so funny because he's like the last gasp of like the Daily Show energy, right? That the Daily Show came out and it was like fake news or like a false kind of news presentation, and then that led to the next iteration, which was I think Trevor Noah, who was never as successful because he was way more softball than the Daily Show. And then there were all the spin-offs where you have somebody like John Oliver who's doing the same shtick but who is an imperialist, right? Like Jon Stewart, I never believed was an actual imperialist. And I think that once it came time to turn his ire against the Democrats, he couldn't do it, which is why he retired when he did. Whereas somebody like John Oliver is a straight imperialist. Like, he's happy to spread around imperial propaganda. And not sure if you're comfortable disclosing, but what do you do to make a living? Like a lot of people out there, dude, I'm currently unemployed. What I do to make a living is hopefully this. Like, everybody is throwing their chips in somewhere, bud. So, anyway. Now there's the mention of ending unemployment benefits to get people back to work, which we all knew would start circulating. That sounds an awful lot like maybe threaten starvation and people will work for shitty wages again. We need our peasants back. What are we going to do when we say, if you don't pony up the cash, we'll burn the fucking bakery? A bit on the nose, slay the system, but I understand the sentiment. But how do I live in an apartment? Great fortune. That's all. Good fortune. We are getting into territory here, Robert, where I actually can't disclose what happened. It's just I had a job and then I didn't, and there was a kind of before and then an after, and that's given me enough to sort of float for a bit, right? But no, there will likely come up, like, unless what I'm doing now genuinely starts to pay out dividends in serious ways, which I don't expect it will, and I'm not trying to guilt anybody or anything like this. If you would like to donate, my Patreon is the Canadian Commie on Patreon. Yeah, I genuinely do think there will come a point where I'll probably have to get a capitalist job again. I'll probably just have to sell my services to capital again, and that's pretty likely. But for now, I've got some months ahead of me. So we'll see. We'll see what happens. And yeah, that's that. Like, I'm fundamentally in the same boat you are, bud. It's just I've got a little bit of leeway right now, and I'm trying to turn that leeway that I have into something that I've always wanted to do, and that I hope will be successful. It has been relatively successful in certain ways, but now we're just scaling, right? Now I'm just scaling, right? If I can scale what I've been doing up enough, to be able to make it financially viable, which I know it can be financially viable because there are other people doing this very same thing, and it is financially viable. And that really just comes down to keep doing it. And as long as I keep doing it, and as long as it keeps scaling up, like once I hit 1,000 subscribers, I can start to monetize from YouTube. It's reasonable to believe I will hit 1,000 subscribers at least by the end of this year. So there's monetizing my videos through YouTube. There is direct donations through my Patreon. And then also I have a podcast that's just starting up called The Socialist Agenda. Socialistagenda.com if you want to go to that. We update weekly. And that also could follow that same kind of principle where it could start to be monetized and people could start to donate to us that way. So, and now I'm doing like this live stream. I'm hoping that's going to pick up. And this live stream has already been wildly successful. I was thinking that I was going to be sitting here talking to like one person, but it's yeah. And I agree with you. People are waking up due to the pandemic without a doubt. You're absolutely right about that. Have you browsed A Boring Dystopia Reddit sub? Yeah, I'm subscribed to them. You'll see them as I go through here. They are showing pics of restaurants, posting things saying they are closed because everyone quit. Haha. Yeah. Like, all we have at this stage, and it's a major thesis of this channel, all we have at this stage is the removal of our labor. It's the last, it's all we've got, is to go on strike, is to quit, and like, let's also be really clear about what's happening with cities. Like, we went into a pandemic. It's a bit different here in Canada, but in the United States, they went into a pandemic and they basically told everybody to slag off, right? They fired everybody. Everybody lost their health insurance. Throughout this entire pandemic, these people got supports on like, a couple of $1,000s spread out over like 6 months. Like, it's not enough, right? And most people in the United States, like majority of people in the United States, were already one paycheck away from losing everything, from having to be evicted, all this kind of stuff. So what do you think happened, right? All these people lost their jobs. They lost their livelihoods. They have nowhere else to go. So they left, right? They left the city and they're going out into rural whatever. They're doing what Robert's suggesting here. They're getting motorhomes. They're going off the grid or whatever. They're just leaving, right? So it's not like there's this ready to work, sir, workforce standing around waiting to hop into work, right? They're gone. They left, right? And how do I know they left? Because they were on the brink in the first place. They were part of what's called a precariat, right? They were in a precarious situation to begin with, right? They got evicted. They got kicked out. They left. So there is certainly a degree of like, oh, we're opening up and there's jobs and there are people living in the neighborhood or people living around who won't come and work. Like, certainly there's a little bit of that going on. But the true reality is, like, people left. People left. They had to. They had nowhere else to go. I know, buddy. I know. The idea of being evicted is scary. I know. I'm with you on that, buddy. You're a good boy. You're a good boy. And so this and the narrative as it's being done online, right? And we're only hearing about it culturally, right? We're only hearing about these events culturally through the sharing of memes and through the sharing of this kind of thing. Nobody's writing about it. Nobody's talking about it. There's no articles in the Globe and Mail. There's no articles in the Washington Post. Nobody's actually talking about it sincerely. And when they do start to talk about it, they're going to talk about it the exact way that this guy is suggesting that they're going to talk about it, which is threaten starvation, people will work for shitty wages again. That's exactly what they're going to do. You're going to see articles in the New York Times. You're going to see articles in the Washington Post saying, hey, we should torture these guys again and send them back to work, right? Like, that's what is going to happen. And, and we shouldn't let them get away with it. It's total bullshit. And we should nick out. Well, and many of these people have. Yeah, there's no articles in the media because they don't want people to get any ideas. Yeah, just don't talk about it, right? That's what they do with the Liberals' Canadian Infrastructure Bank, right? This literal fascist institution that the Liberals have put in place. They just don't talk about it, right? That's what they do with the Liberals selling weapons to the Saudi Arabians. They just don't talk about it. It's just not talked about. right? Like when Hassan there, I hope, is that his actual name? Anyway, when he dropped that question on Justin Trudeau, like Justin Trudeau couldn't have seen that coming because nobody in the media talks to him about that. Nobody in the media asks him those questions. Nobody says, hey, why are you selling weapons to the Saudi Arabians while they're committing a genocide in Yemen? Like, that doesn't happen, right? So the lie of omission is where our media is truly guilty, right? That the media doesn't directly, overtly lie to you. They just don't tell you the whole story. They just don't tell you the whole picture, right? They just give you the picture that they want you to see. There's a question. Do you recommend the IT field? Working remotely in this pandemic seems more desirable. I mean, do what you got to do, bud. It really is that simple. Like, if you can stomach it, if you can take it, like, I know people who do exactly what you're talking about. My mom, actually. My mom does exactly. She works for Canada Census, right? And she works from home, right? She says that working from home actually makes the job really easy, right? She's good at it. She's got the gift of gab just like I do, and so that really helps out. And I don't know. I feel like, especially in the midst of the pandemic, just if I were to sit in front of my computer and have a headset on and answer people's phone calls as they come, as they send in, that's reasonable. I think once I start looking around for work again, for like the kind of capitalist style jobs, I'm going to try to do something a bit more meaningful for myself. Just something like, if I can be somebody who's administrating vaccines or organizing that kind of thing, or being involved in that kind of level, that seems appealing to me. But we'll see. That's all just talk right now. COVID-19 vaccine, big pharma, thoughts. I mean, it's as simple as it is. Like, Bill Gates is being overt. Go listen to Bill Gates talk about it. He's laying it all out for everybody to see, right? We are not going to sell the vaccine, or we're not going to open it up to be mass produced for cheap so that everybody can't be vaccinated, because big pharmaceutical companies need more money, right? And what this is ultimately going to lead to is it's going to mean that the vaccine is going to fail, because the places that don't get vaccinated are just going to turn into like mutagen developers. They're just going to turn into like these hotbeds of COVID, where the virus is going to mutate, and then it's going to become resistant to the vaccine, and then it's going to reinfect. Right? That's what's going to happen. Like, it's very clear what's going to happen to us. Like, there's no mystery to it. And it's 100% happening because the capitalists refuse to do what must be done, which is ensure that even the poor are taken care of. Right? And this is like a cut off your nose to spite your face kind of thing, right? They're so desperate to have their money that they're willing to reinfect everybody with a new mutated virus, by withholding the virus in the first place, right? It's so clear what's going to happen. Dave, I work in a small digital marketing firm, and I'm considering taking Bill Hicks' advice, which is, thanks for the live stream. It was a lot of fun. Going to go to bed. Going to go be dad. Bye, Daniel. Night. Thanks for tuning in. We're going to stop in about a half hour here anyhow, so thanks for coming, bud. Oof, did you get vaccinated? I have not yet been vaccinated. I feel I'm in a position where I'm well sequestered, and I know that there are limited supplies, and so I'm just gonna hold off, and I will pursue it. I will do it for sure. I'm not an anti-vaxxer. I believe in vaccinations, but right now I think that I'm pretty low on the totem pole of people who should be getting vaccinated. Do you trust that an evil corporation would give an honest solution? No. Like, no. I don't. Corporations are by their definitions evil, right? They're by their very definition a demonic institution. They can't be honest, which is why you need to have strong regulation and why you need to have strong government backing in order to kind of put them back in their place. Like, if it was up to corporations, guys, they're going to sell us air if they can, right? They're going to commodify air if they can, right? They're going to commodify our water. They're going to commodify everything if we let them, right? I know Bill Hicks Bill Hicks says if you're in marketing, kill yourself. Haha. He was a comedian. Yeah. Bill Hicks is great, by the way. I genuinely full disclosure, I was a 9/11 truther. Like, I really believed in the 9/11 conspiracy. And so I love conspiracies. I love delving into conspiracy. And I could be easily convinced that Bill Hicks was suicided, right? I think he was telling a little bit too much. He was cutting a little too close to the truth bone. And so they had to get rid of him. Why trust the vaccines then? I think that there is enough government oversight and enough government regulation and enough I just think that there's enough regulatory oversight that if the vaccine wasn't efficacious, if it didn't work in the first place, it wouldn't move forward. I don't think that there is a big conspiracy beyond let's see how much money we can make from the populace. And if you were selling something that didn't work and people knew it didn't work, ultimately it won't work because of the structure that I've already described. But I do think that there's enough eyeballs on it, right? And there's nobody credible really ringing the bell, right? So, I play Heroes of the Storm, which is like League of Legends, so you're going to see that pop up on the feed all the time. I'm not going to get rid of it. Current model for Uber, Lyft just doesn't work. Expenses have scaled up in near perfect step with revenue, as have net losses. As it stands now, both improvement outlooks are tough to believe. So this is from our investing, so it's a bit more technical. The model for Uber and Lyft doesn't work, right? Which you can see very clearly because certain states, and I think even federally, have tried to finally designate Uber and Lyft workers as employees. And the second they tried to do that, it completely bottomed out their stock, right? Because everybody knows like the gig economy model is slavery. Like it's a wage slave system without a doubt. And so if you try to actually force these companies to actually treat their employees as employees, well, then the model doesn't work. And it shouldn't work. Fuck this system, right? These guys should be taxi drivers. They should be regulated as taxi drivers. Just because something's new and fresh and has technology behind it doesn't mean we need to support it. And that's exactly how I feel about Uber and Lyft. Some new articles are starting to say that COVID can spread in the air. I would like to read those articles, Oof. If you can even just put them in the live chat, I'll definitely take a look at them. I'll just put them up right here, right now. A boring dystopia calls for boring revolution, I guess. But hey, we love to see it. We're literally watching the largest labor movement in modern American history happen in the form of paper signs. Oh, we already did this one. Wah, wah. Yeah, Doug Ford's handling of Rob Ford's estate faces scrutiny from provincial lawyer. It should in the first place. So even if Doug Ford is not being scummy about it, then, but he is. Like, Doug Ford's a scumbag. Right? Like, we knew this before we elected him, that he was a scumbag. This was it. I'm not sure what you mean, Dave. What if you were selling a vaccine that created more health issues later so you can make more money from a new health issue? Smoking is good for you. Yeah, I definitely see where you're coming from, Robert. Like, there, and don't get me wrong, like, I do respect the skepticism. Like, I really do. And I don't, but I don't think, like, should health issues arrive, I think you might be giving them a bit more credit than they're due, right? Like, these guys aren't they're not that smart, right? Like, they're clever, they're conniving, certainly, but, like, to organize what you are suggesting, the idea that they would purposefully create within the vaccine like genetic coding to create health issues later on so that they could monetize it later on. Like, somebody's ringing the bell about that, right? This is one of the things that got me off a 9/11 trutherism, right? It's like, think of the amount of people who would actually have to be involved in the process of this being an inside job. Like, it's just so many people. Somebody's ringing the bell, bud. Like, somebody's ringing the bell. They did. I mean, that was sort of the pitch. but like they knew, like I think the difference here is that with smoking, like they always knew that it was not good for you. And I see what you're saying. Like they put like nicotine and they put all that kind of stuff inside of it. So if they could do that with smoking, why not also do that with the vaccine? Yeah, but I think I don't know enough about the issue to speak with it with confidence, and I'm not really disagreeing with you, right? Like I think your skepticism is warranted. I think we've seen enough as a people to be skeptical. But even with like the smoking thing that you're saying, there was somebody ringing the bell, right? And if somebody's ringing the bell on this, I'll take a look at what they have to say. I think that's where I'll land on it, right? Like if what you're saying is true and there's somebody ringing the bell about it, yeah, I'll read it and I'll spread it around. I'll talk about it for sure. And but I don't personally know enough about it. I don't personally. I haven't done the legwork on that, I guess is where I'll land, right? So I don't want to spread around any misinformation or lead people one way or the other. I think it's in the corporation's best interests to make an effective vaccine. You don't fuck with biological organisms. They are unpredictable. Yeah, that's true, Dave, but at the same time, like these guys are kind of high-level sociopaths, right? Like, which I think is what Robert is ultimately landing on, right? Like these capitalists are high-level sociopaths. Like they do think that they can mess with things on this kind of god tier sort of thing, right? Like that there are these there are like just evil corporations who are doing evil things in the world, and like these guys are actively attempting to fuck us over in meaningful ways. So like, would I put it past them to mess with biological organisms? But at the same time, I don't think it's as clean as this. I think that, like, again, like I think if they started to do what we're suggesting, there would be somebody ringing the bell about it, right? Like, there always is. Okay. Oof is saying, type in COVID airborne and CNBC. You got it, bud. Let's go. COVID airborne CNBC TLA. Well, hello. This is an article from today. CDC, COVID is airborne farther than 6 feet. Oh my goodness. Here's what that means for returning to, of course they're framing it that way. You're obviously returning to the office even though this thing is airborne. Oh my God. The Center for Disease Control and Prevention's latest updated guidance on how COVID spreads emphasizes that the virus can be spread through the air via very fine droplets and aerosolized particles from an infected person who is more than 6 feet away. Christ. Since October, the CDC has said that there is a risk of airborne transmission of COVID, but as people return to indoor establishments like schools or offices, this guidance highlights the necessity of safety measures. Dr. Anthony Fauci said on Sunday on NBC's Meet the Press, no, it emphasizes the need to pay people to stay home, to tell these capitalists to go get fucked, go away, you are not useful. When you have the ability of a particular virus to go further than a few feet away, clearly one of them is proper ventilation. Number 2, mask wearing. How about number 1, stay home? The CDC says there have been instances when people infected with COVID, despite maintaining physical distance from others. Yabba yabba. What does this mean for returning to the office? Fuck you. Fuck you. Like, at no point during this article are they going to say, hey, maybe people should stay at home. Right? Maybe people should stay at home. Right? So now the thing's airborne. Great. Great. God damn it. Okay. Nice find, bud. Nice find, Oof. Thanks for sharing. I appreciate it. I value you. Good work. I know you're sending this stuff around in good faith, but boy, does that break my heart, bud. You guys are going to see my super... This is how I save information for myself. I send it to myself on Facebook. So that I can refer to it later and then cry and eat ice cream. Oh my God. Oh my Christ. No, it's okay, bud. You're good. Thanks so much for sharing that. Vaccines need their ingredients to be disclosed. If they are not disclosed, that would open up a huge lawsuit and an easy payout. Yeah, but that would also mean that that's essentially making it open source, right? That's essentially making it free source, and that's the problem. The capitalists don't want to make things free source, right? I mean, at least they won't get their 2030 Great Reset. Humanity won't last. Capitalism loses. That's right, Dave. If we all die, capitalism loses. Checkmate. Please search up the future of air travel, Honeywell. You got it, bud. Let's take a look at what Robert's talking about here. How your air travel journey will change. No. Ready to book your next flight? Expect these changes on the journey. Don't stay home. Travelers screened at airports. The transportation was down by about 85%. Yeah, that makes sense. Nobody wants to travel right now. As the air travel industry recovers, we will need reassurance that it's safer to fly again. I mean, an airborne virus is probably not. Post September 11th, we saw an incredible number of new design elements, blah, blah. Nearly 60% travelers surveyed, social distancing, yabba, yabba. Finally, we're fucking like, don't you hate it when you click on like a recipe article, right? Somebody's like, here's how to make cookies. And then it opens up with, when I was a young boy in Tuscany, my father, and right, it's like 15 paragraphs, and then finally the recipe's like buried at the bottom after a whole bunch of ads that pop up after you get it, and the thing's like 4 ingredients, and the recipe's like 3 lines. That's what this feels like. They're just padding it, man. Like, just get to it. Why it matters. You could be required to answer health screening assessments. That's not different than much anything else I do. In addition, technology, could you sure? Yeah. Like, I feel like I've been places that do exactly that. Thermal imaging screening and plexiglass. Oh, that's fun. Yeah, the sort of sterilization of everything, the kind of weirdly fascist view of everything, the plexiglass. But that same thing happened in my workplace. It's largely performative, if you ask me. Designed to sort of like normalize, right? Like you got to normalize a lot of stuff. Like, oh, it's totally fine to go through this place because look, there's plexiglass and everything's sort of cordoned off and all this kind of stuff. None of it matters, but it makes you feel good and it normalizes this. Ultraviolet cleaning and improved in-flight air quality. Yeah. Arrival change, more cleaning. I got to tell you guys, I got to stop talking about this. I just do. I've only got 20 minutes left on the stream. I got to stop talking about COVID. I just for myself. Sorry, but I can only handle so much. I hope they extend the CERB for you. I hope they extend the CERB for everybody. I hope they pass a basic income, bud. Just do it. Like, why not? The Liberals support it. The NDP support it. It should be an election issue, right? Like, they should do it. Everybody should have it, right? Like, if this is proven to anybody, like, we'll still be productive. Everything will be fine. We just won't work for capitalists because fuck them. They're worthless. Careful with showing your Facebook, bro. You are good here, but when you get bigger, there's some assholes and trolls. Yeah, I know. That's sweet of you. It's sweet of you to think of me that way. I do the same thing with the sending stuff for myself. It's just nice to have like a kind of a permanent dump and all that kind of stuff. And I don't know, people can find me right now. Like, it's not like I'm hiding, right? Like, it's not like I'm. And Facebook has pretty decent, like, you can just ban people, right? You can block people. That's fine. I mean, what are they going to do? They're going to shit on my Facebook? I'm not that worried about it, honestly. I'm not that attached to Facebook in the first place. If it wasn't for the fact that my mom was on Facebook, I probably wouldn't be on Facebook. What do you think of worker co-ops versus unions? I mean, I think we should have both. I think that both should be like a big force and all of that kind of stuff. But I do think that ultimately unions, and as history has sort of moved forward, we've seen more and more that unions are really easy to co-opt, right? They're really easy to take over by capitalists. And if you can, and what they really do, and one of the major strategies is like, if you can just like bribe union leadership, if you can corrupt just like that one tier where you have all the workers, right? Then you have the tier of union leadership that they all elect. And then you have the capitalists above that. Oh, sorry, guys. Above that, if you can just corrupt that one group, right? You don't need to corrupt the workers. You can just corrupt that one group. Then you can kind of take it over. Whereas I think it's harder to do that with a worker co-op, right? It's harder for a capitalist to come in and convince a group of workers who are all voting on their own behalf to corrupt themselves and work against their own best interests. So I think that worker co-ops are probably more stable. They work. I think that they probably work a little bit better than unions in regards to actually affecting the end game, which is to say that they're better at actually improving the lot of the worker. But I will also say that unions, that once unions begin to mobilize, like once unions actually flip and they actually do start working on behalf of the workers, they become militant very quickly. Whereas I think worker co-ops would become more protectionist, right? Because the worker co-ops work for itself, whereas unions do connect to larger federated bodies and do connect in larger ways. But that could just be that they're better organized through time because they've been around longer, right? So again, that's all theory. That's all theory crafting. I think pursuing both is probably a good idea. I think having both in your society is probably fine. I do generally think that unions have largely been co-opted and sort of built into the larger structure of capitalism. And it would be harder to do that with worker co-ops, I think. What do you think of a company providing employees sleeping quarters and only paying in credits for the company store? I mean, that's just slavery, right? Like, how is that not just slavery, right? Like, there's a song that I play called 16 Tons. And it's a song that was written by Virginia coal miners when they were striking and creating unions. And that's exactly the arrangement that these coal mine companies created for these workers. That they advertised around America and Europe high wages, which they paid, right? They did pay the high wages. And so then everybody moved out to Virginia or whatever coal kind of place existed, right, where the coal mines were. But of course, what the company didn't tell anybody is that they also owned all of the company, like the general store, which was called the company store. They owned all of the land around the mine, and they owned all of the housing, which they rented. So if you wanted to work in the mine, you needed to rent space from the company, and you also had to buy the goods from the company. So while they did pay you the high wage, they also set the prices of everything so high that you spent all your money just subsisting. And in fact, they purposefully did it so that, and this is a big reason why it led to unions and strikes and all of this. And it leads to people putting themselves in debt to the company. So they work hauling coal out of a mine, 16 tons of coal out of a mine, and then they have to put themselves in debt to the company in order to maintain their subsistence wage. So it's slavery. It's just black and white slavery. And this leads to unions, strikes, and all kinds of organization, which ultimately leads to the first aerial bombardment on American soil, where one of these companies ends up bombing striking union workers with an aerial bombardment. And nobody knows about that. But it's the truth. And so, what you're describing is slavery, right? You should play The Outer Worlds. It has good... I'm a bit skeptical on playing other videos on this live feed just because I don't really know or understand the rules yet. And I don't want to get a ban or a block or something. Just like I think what I'm doing here with the stream on Reddit is fine, but I'm a bit skeptical of playing. It's a video. Oh, I see what you're saying. The Outer Worlds. Okay, I'll take a look at it, bud. Here, let me actually. You saw nothing. Okay. What's it called when your hard work doesn't pay off? Capitalism. Yeah. Webcast, the 100th. Oh, here, so here's a pitch for Socialist Action, right? Socialist Action is the organization that I am a part of. If you want to actually begin organizing, Socialist Action is a great organization to get on. They have their own YouTube channel that they're also building with me. I've been on their thing a couple of times, so please be sure to go to them. Socialist Action. You can just go to socialistaction.ca, find them that way, or type in Socialist Action into YouTube. You'll find them. They're a great resource if you want to put on a podcast for like a couple hours, have it on in the background or whatever. Right? They're really well educated. They're really passionate. They're fighting right now. They're fighting for the unions, for union positions, because they agree with me and understand that we need to be striking, right? We need a mass general strike. That's what we need. Calgary Mayor says anti-mask rallies are thinly veiled white nationalist protests. I think the more I think on this, the more I think that's true. That I've been to some of these anti-mask rallies. I've filmed them and made a couple of videos about it. The white nationalist presence is there, for sure. I don't think it's very well organized. I think it's just sort of manifesting itself now. But it really is far more likely that those anti-mask rallies are going to tip towards fascism before they tip in any other direction. I make the case that we should be going down there and we should be talking to these people and we should be trying to also tilt things our way. But I don't have much luck with that. I don't have much luck convincing other people of that position. So that's what it is. Just a reminder that Bill Gates is a piece of shit. If you are born poor, it's not your mistake, but if you die poor, it's your mistake. Ha ha, what a douchebag. This guy and Jeff Bezos, incidentally, simultaneously, basically the same month, divorced their wives in what is obviously just a way to grift the system, because they can send money their wives' way and that money will be untaxed, right? So it's pretty obviously a grift what's going on. It's safe to say not all anti-maskers are nationalists, but most nationalists are anti-maskers. It is weird, though, right? I just think it's kind of weird, don't you, that there is this sort of overlap, that anti-maskers and nationalists kind of merge with one another. I don't necessarily understand that, and it'd be interesting to see, like, why is it the case that, like, a nationalist is like, why does being a nationalist mean that you don't listen to health advice? Like, self-centered, certainly idiots, and individualists, yeah, and maybe it has that kind of machismo tough guy sort of thing, like, I can just take, I can face this danger, I don't need safety, me first, your health second, yeah. Anyway, 30% 35% drop in road accidents and related hospitalizations. That's nice. Quebec curfew. Doses after dark. That's what I think of. The second I see doses after dark, I'm just like, doses after dark. Annapolis Valley Church fined for violating gathering limits. Yeah, that's happening. This is a big conservative sticking point. Like, you talk to conservatives and they'll bring this stuff up all the time. They really want their church back. Starbucks Canada offers all employees 3 paid sick days until September. Yeah, okay. Starbucks, I worked for Starbucks for a little while. They're actually really good at optics. Like, that's what they're really good at, because that's their whole shtick, right? Their product sucks. They sell trash. It's completely garbage. But they've created this, like, allure, right? It's completely accurate that their mascot should be a siren, right? A creature who beckons people in with her beauty and her wonderful song, only to have them smash against the rocks and then eat them. That's Starbucks, baby. It's wild watching consent being manufactured in real time. The police entered the compound and Gaza militants fired rubber-tipped bullets. Anger was already building in response to rockets towards Jerusalem. Oh, I see. They're just like omitting the truth and turning it into Gaza militants fired rockets towards Jerusalem, and the Israel police fought with the Palestinian protesters in escalation, right? So just pull out the fact that the police are the aggressors. That's Americanism, right? That's the American military generally. SNL is sure funny. We'll coup whoever we want. Deal with it. Imperialistic laughter. Yeah. Don't talk to me about benefits cheats while millionaires and billionaires dodge more money in tax than most of us will ever see in our lives, and everyone turns a blind eye to it. Yep. Tax the rich. I mean, let's go farther than that. Let's just get rid of these guys. Let's get rid of these guys. Why are they even part of the system, right? Why is there anyone in the conversation saying, I should have all the money? Get rid of these guys. Just get rid of them. Okay, guys, I got to start thinking about closing this live stream down. Almost getting to 9 o'clock. So let's, I'm going to use the last 5 minutes of this to do what I always do, right? I want to talk about you guys. I think you guys are doing really good. Honestly, like the conversations I'm having here, I know that lots of people are struggling. Lots of people are having difficulty. I know, buddy, I know. Lots of people are struggling out there. Lots of people are having difficulty. I know that I'm struggling. I'm having difficulty too. And I know that, oh man. All we have now is our solidarity with one another, right? And that's why, like, this live stream, without a doubt, has been a resounding success, as far as I'm concerned, already. Like, even, like, the fact that there's anybody here. Like, how many people are actually here? 13 of you here. Chat rate, I don't know what any of this means, honestly, but, like, the fact that any of you are here, anybody watching, right? That's a resounding success to me. And we need to stand in solidarity with one another. Yeah, I have my goodest boy on my lap. He is a good boy. He is a good boy. He's a real sweetheart. We have to stand in solidarity with one another. We can't get caught in petty disputes with one another. We have to know who our enemy is, and we have to focus on dismantling the enemy, right? And I know he's a little cutie pie. He really is. And I feel like you guys, you're here because you know something has gone desperately wrong. You know that the way you're being treated is not acceptable. You know that if we continue to treat each other this way, it will destroy us. We know that we need to have a fundamental culture shift, and the only way that we're actually going to have that fundamental culture shift is if we get together and we create the culture we want to see. And that's it. And we have to continue talking to one another. We have to keep participating and pushing the society further to the left. We have to continue being good to one another, continue being good to the people who are around us, continue spreading love, continue doing all of these things, because that's how we defeat these capitalists. That's how we defeat the capitalist death cult, is with love and with compassion and with the insistence that everyone should live with dignity and that everyone should live without fear. I know, buddy. You want to go down. You want to go down. There you go, buddy. I know you're doing well out there. You're making good decisions for yourself. You're making good decisions for yourself, and you're making good decisions for the people around you. The capitalists spend billions and billions and billions of dollars to gaslight us, to convince us that we are less than what we are. Each and every one of you is a divine creature, walking around on divine energy, equal to all who are around you, equal to everything that is around you. We have forgotten that. We don't accept that we are of the same body. We have forgotten that we are connected to the world around us. And we need to bring it back. Okay, guys, this is the end of this one. As always, CanadianCommie.com, SocialistAgenda.com, TheSocialistAgenda.com, my Patreon, all the stuff. You guys have been wonderful to talk to. I'm gonna try to turn this into a daily thing. So I'm gonna be here tomorrow. Good luck. We're gonna need it. Mwah. Thanks, Elias. Mwah.